Chapter 51. Burning will boom. The terrible roar resounded through the sky in an instant, and the rippling and turbulent wind swept across the four directions. The powerful aftermath and power affected the sea, and it was turbulent and even almost formed a new round of tsunami. The vegetation planted on the coastline of the city, the standing billboards, and the parked vehicles were all broken and blown away by the strong wind. The spreading sound waves shattered all the glass products in the city near the coast in an instant. People instinctively covered their ears because the sound was too loud. The ground also shook wildly. Siete, hurry up and be careful not to be blown away. Jennifer, hold me tight. The disaster-level storm almost caused another wave of disasters. Fortunately, there was still a distance, so no casualties were caused. Seeing this, Ella and the others turned their gazes to the battlefield again. The collision of several waves of force distorted the air, but it couldn't block the sight of the saints. Isla frowned and murmured, "This didn't hit you?" Elvis looked serious. "Damn it, the strength of that demon is terrifyingly strong. With this set of cooperation, the other party can still dodge." A golden light appeared in his eyes, obviously mobilizing the small universe. The other saints looked at each other and nodded silently. Wisps of flames were slowly burning from the surface of their bodies. In the momentary confrontation just now, whether it was Bart, Alfred, Tina, or Sanzabu, they had achieved perfection. There was no communication, and a tacit understanding was reached in an instant, and Alfred took the lead in attacking head-on. Sanzabu used the divine spell to control the opponent, making Mephisto unable to act for a short time. Afterwards, Bart's Taurus tactics, the giant horns, were powerful and used to destroy the energy defenses arranged on the opponent's body surface. Tina's scarlet poisonous needle was used as a killer move. Attack Mephisto's Achilles heel. Block the opponent's nervous system and blood. The close-to-perfect cooperation still allows the opponent to break free. That kind of strength is really suffocating. However, they are saints, and the word despair has been erased from the dictionary of life after everyone awakened to the small universe. For saints, despair is more like a bonfire lit in the Parthenon. Be extinguished or be glorified forever, just like the saints of all ages, who dared to punch that punch in the face of powerful gods. How could everyone be afraid of mere demons? Boom, boom, boom. A sound wave exploded, and 10 figures galloped towards the sky from the base city. In the sky, Alfred looked indifferently at the looming black silhouette in front of him. Facing the mocking look of this silhouette, he put down his hand, turned around and looked towards the sky behind him, and saw that he was supposed to be confronting him and was beaten by Bait Tina. Mephisto in the movie, I don't know when it appeared there. He looked at himself and the others with mocking eyes. Bart and Tina also looked sideways. Bart and Tina gritted their teeth, apparently irritated by Mephisto's superior and playful gesture. Calm down, Bart, Tina. He just wants to see us irritated and powerless. On the side, Sanzabu opened his eyes calmly like a clear spring, flashing wisps of invisible golden patterns, as if there is another world full of Buddhas in these eyes. He who has always maintained a peaceful mind can easily understand Mephisto's approach. The devil is good at playing with people's hearts, souls, deceit, and disguise. All you do is hide the real purpose. The one who remains calm is Alfred. His heart is full of flames, and he is also a proud phoenix, but he never loses his mind because of anger. He frowned and didn't know what he was thinking. He turned his head slightly and glanced at Ella and the others who flew up from below and surrounded Mephisto heavily. His breath was surging, and his body slowly climbed up like the 3 of Bart, until he met the 3 of them. Mephisto remains on the same level. The 14 saints surrounded Mephisto heavily, exuding a shocking fighting spirit. Tell me, how long can you hold on? 1 minute? 2 minutes? Or 3 minutes? You don't naively think that the gap between us can be smoothed out by will alone? Believe me, your best choice is to kneel down, surrender to me, follow me, and step on the supreme throne together. The surrounded Mephisto turned into a chatterbox, chattering evilly on his face. The voice is full of demagogic power. However, the eyes full of mockery let everyone know that this vile devil is still playing tricks on them. Alfred glanced at his companions left and right, and the flames in his eyes grew stronger. He said slowly, "It's a pleasure to fight side by side with you, even if we just met for only a few minutes. That's it, let's fight." The voice was very soft, but it could be clearly conveyed to everyone's ears. Although there were few words, it ignited everyone's monstrous fighting spirit. Mephisto's high head lowered slightly, his eyes flickered, he felt the danger. the 14 little devils in front of him. Each of them was like a volcano in hell, containing majestic energy that could be used at any time. Waiting for the eruption. Once it erupts, it will definitely send out the power to destroy the world. Even as a demon lord, he couldn't completely ignore it. That kind of firm will and belief seemed to have substance, and in a trance, he saw the beautiful goddess holding a golden victory scepter, wearing a white gauze, and wearing a crown of flowers and laurel. This is incredible. Mephisto knew that these brats were about to show their true strength. The blood is boiling, the fighting spirit is burning, and everyone's eyes are shining with the light of their own constellations at the same time. Bart stretches out his palm with a metal glove, and his sharp fingertips point to Mephisto. Spread. Let's have a big fight. As soon as the voice fell, there was a boom. The sound wave exploded, and he instantly turned into a golden beam of light, rushing towards Mephisto. This instant eruption was even far faster than the speed he had shown before. Even Mephisto, who had been prepared for a long time, was surprised by it. He leaned forward suddenly, dodging Bart's attack, and the slender demon tail behind him flicked like an iron whip and hit Bart's back heavily. Chapter 52. The threat is approaching. The powerful bombardment made Bart instantly turn into a golden shell and fall obliquely towards the sea. Boom! Falling into the tumbling sea, splashing the sky-high water column. When the war broke out, the sky seemed to sense it. The wind howled, the rain poured down, the sky became extremely dark, and the tumbling clouds in the sky flashed a flash of lightning from time to time, bringing the whole world into a doomsday scene. Drink! The other 13 saints also rushed up to besiege Mephisto at the same time. Boom! 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 There was a deafening roar, and air waves exploded. People stared blankly at the 13 beams of light, interlacing and colliding with the evil figure in the distant sky. Just by watching from a distance, one can feel the oppressive atmosphere in it, and the raging air waves are rolling and rippling in the sky. The rain all over the sky was blasted into circles of water by the force of the collision. Roaring, roaring, blood flying, radiance suddenly appeared, and the lightning across the sky brought a ray of light to illuminate the blurred battlefield. In a daze, the people in the Gulf City seemed to see the scene of the ancient gods' battlefield in the Parthenon Temple. Naturally, the vast war that broke out in the Gulf of California cannot be hidden from all countries in the world. It can be said that the moment the demon that appeared burst out with power, it had already been detected and captured by the major forces. Using military satellites or various channels to observe the footage of the Gulf of California, the mighty battle scene and the non-human power make the major forces almost drool. Whether it is calling the destructive meteorite group or Bart's punch breaking up the meteorite group, all kinds of terrible natural disasters hit by Tina's scarlet whirlwind wiped out the meteorite group. Or Ella and others can easily solve the tsunami crisis. Such extraordinary power is amazing and coveted. It's a pity that neither demons nor saints are existences that they can covet. Regardless of whether they are powerful or rich, they cannot touch the gods at all. They dare not, because the ambitions and conspiracies they breed may be induced by the gods and lead to destruction. As for the demons, even if they are confident, they dare not say that they can be compared to the demons in terms of conspiracy, and it is uncertain who will control who. But longing, coveting under that extraordinary power, is a headache again. Before the appearance of Athena, the world was not peaceful. Mutants, superpowers, and supercriminals emerged in endlessly. Aliens were not considered secrets in various countries. After all, the Great War in the 1990s was not enough to hide it. Smiley face. But at least it can maintain stability and grasp the world situation. But disasters and extraordinary powers followed one after another. Everything originated from the beginning of Athena's appearance. Some people may blame Athena, thinking that it was the appearance of Athena that caused the disaster, but most people are not so stupid, even those in power. Human beings are as insignificant as ants, powerless in front of a god. If Athena wanted to bring disaster, she would not use such stupid means. Even if it brought a crisis, it would be the powerful gods who are suspected to appear in the future, and she would only worry about whether the battle between Athena and the gods would affect the earth. As for these demons, what are they? This is the gap in the level of life. The gap is so big that there is no doubt at all. But the headache is here. All kinds of extraordinary and powerful monsters keep appearing, especially this time. The red-skinned demon, together with the 14 saints, seem to be a bit invincible. You must know that 2 of them are wearing golden holy clothes, a holy warrior wearing a bronze holy garment. The aftermath of that battle had almost spread to the Gulf City a few kilometers away, almost destroying this poor city several times. Facing the siege of 14 super-strong fighters, the demon looked so relaxed and freehand. What is the origin of this demon? Why do you want to come to the world? This question also plagues everyone. White House. The president and the leaders of the secret department are watching the world-shattering scene on the big screen. It is not clear who will win and who will lose, but they know that if the devil wins, it may have some intentions on the earth. The president bent over with a headache and put his hands on the desk, saying, "So, what I want to know now is, who will win this war?" "I'm sorry, Mr. President. At our level, it is impossible to estimate and analyze a battle of this level." One of the secret department ministers shook his head. "Okay." The president took a deep breath and asked, "In other words, is this demon targeting the earth, or is it a saint?" The others looked at each other and shook their heads in silence. Seeing this, the president was even more displeased. At this moment, there was a knock on the door, and the president came in casually. When the door opened, a one-eyed bald man in a black cloak walked in front of everyone's eyes. "Mr. President, Nick Fury." Looking at the person who came, the eyes of the leaders of several other departments flickered slightly. They were all secret departments. They knew the background of this guy very well. The director of the mysterious department established after World War II. It should far exceed their FBI, CIA, and so on. The annual allocation of funds is even their sum, dedicated to supernatural occurrences. Especially after Athena came to the world, the president, Congress, and other high-level pay more and more attention to S.H.I.E.L.D. I believe Mr. President should have doubts. Fury ignored the eyes of other departments and looked directly at the president. "So I hope you can enlighten me." Of course, according to the analysis of S.H.I.E.L.D., we have reason to believe that the origin of this demon is very amazing. We have studied many myths and illusions and ancient book records. According to various illustrations and images, 87% of this demon comes from Lord of Hell, Mephisto, the monarch of hell. The president and others stared at each other. Fury's expression remained unchanged. He took the documents he brought and put them on the table. After opening them, there were a few photos taken inside. The color photos showed an isolated island beach. He continued, "Yes, his appearance is not by chance. We captured footage from a military satellite, and he came to Earth right where Athena came." In the picture, an old man in a black, traditional suit stands on the beach, wearing a black round hat and holding a civilized stick. Chapter 53 officially promotes the Avengers plan. The eyes of several people were slightly puzzled. The devil in the Gulf of California did not match the image of the old man on the beach in the picture. Fury continued to take out a picture from it, and the gray and white picture was blurred. The bird's eye view shows the moment when the terrifying pillar of thunder piercing through the sky pierced through and shattered the island. The white light illuminates the dark night like day, but still captures the blurred picture of the last moment of the island being blown up. The old man was blown to pieces by the thunder at the last moment, revealing his real body, and he was fighting with the saints over the sea and over the Gulf of California. Demons are exactly the same. This made everyone stand up immediately. So it's really him? The demon who dared to covet the goddess was not killed by God's punishment and dared to reappear in the world. Everyone was shocked. I have a preliminary understanding of the audacity of this demon in my heart. I was struck to death by the goddess Athena with lightning on my front foot. I didn't expect that after I survived by luck. I ran to the earth with my back foot and shot at the saints. It is really courageous. Athena, who is not afraid of rage at all? In this regard, Fury shook his head. Our existing information cannot reach that level, but we initially guessed that the demon may be sure that the goddess should have something to get rid of now, so he dared to come here unscrupulously. Earth. Gentlemen, the problem is no longer this. We can't control these demons, gods, etc., but the war between them is already affecting the security of the earth. The president rubbed his brows with a tired face. This time it is in Mexico. If it wasn't for those saint fighters, the city would have been destroyed. What about the next time? Who can guarantee that the war will not be fought in our territory next time? If it is in New York? In Washington? At this stage, we may need saints, but the fate of human beings is still in our own hands. I hope that human beings have a guardian of their own, no matter what method they use. Fury, we fully supported your plan before. How are you preparing now? This is the purpose of my visit today, Mr. President. S.H.I.E.L.D. has preliminarily selected candidates. The president turned to the next page of the document, and the words Avengers Project came into view. Create a team with the ability to solve supernatural time. The number of the team is not set on the line. This team is not under the jurisdiction of any department. Seeing this, the president froze for a moment. Upon hearing the president's words, other departments immediately issued objections. Absolutely not. If such a team is not under the jurisdiction of the government, then they have too much power. What should we do if they send a crisis to the United States? That's right. The team we spent huge sums of money to build must be controlled by our will. Mr. President, this is absolutely not acceptable. We must not authorize such a high degree of freedom. Everyone's idea is very simple. Such a powerful superpower team must be in their hands. The government has spent a lot of effort to recruit members and spend huge sums of money to form the Avengers. As a result, people have a high degree of freedom and are not governed. What is this? Do something good for the planet? What are you kidding? It would be good if they don't do anything, and it's impossible to think about letting them contribute selflessly. Fury ignored the clamor of other people at all, looked directly at the president, and said forcefully, Mr. President, believe me, what we need are not puppets, soldiers, but superheroes who protect the Earth. Right what? Not just the threat inside the Earth, but the threat outside the Earth, powerful demons, unknown gods, alien civilizations. A high degree of freedom can make such a team play to the extreme. If such a team is under jurisdiction, it is equivalent to putting a chain on a wild beast, which will wipe out the wildness of the beast. We need to recognize ourselves. Our threat has never been other countries. The sonorous and deep words echoed in everyone's ears, causing everyone to fall into silence immediately. Whether they like it or not, they must admit that the threat has spread to the whole world, and they are at the center of the source of the storm. Disasters are waiting at any time. Advent. If they have any small thoughts and plans, they must be alive first. The president stared at the scene of the fierce battle on the big screen in a daze. The sea was turbulent and tumbling, and the storm that connected the world and could destroy everything was broken up by the demon with a single punch, and the tsunami was easily manipulated. Such a scene was like the end of the world. The city a few kilometers away was crumbling, and he could even seem to hear the terrified screams and cries. If such a picture appears in Washington, in the United States, will human beings really have the ability to resist? The Oval Office fell into dead silence. I can only hear the breathing of the crowd. I don't know how long it has passed. The president's thoughts have changed a lot. Finally, he turned his head and looked at Fury. I will promote the Avengers plan as the president, but the role of the Avengers is only against external threats. I don't want any willpower to dominate this squad. If this squad threatens America, you are primarily responsible. Yes, sir. Fury's one-eyed flashed sharply, and he nodded in answer. The tumbling dark clouds and clouds flashed one after another thunder, and under the electric light, the sea rolled and wreaked havoc, sweeping in all directions. Boundless waves, torrential rain, rumble. At this time, under the sound waves of loud and dull sound, more than a dozen figures were blasted down from the air by a powerful force. Poof, several of the teenagers even spurted out blood, and their clothes were soaked by the mixture of blood and rain. All the boys and girls stood more than 10 meters above the sea, and the lights circulating on their bodies had become extremely weak, as if it was about to go out at any time. It can be seen that everyone's small universe has been exhausted at this moment, and they have reached the point where the oil is exhausted and the lamp is dry. Only Bart, Tina, Alfred and Sanzabu are slightly better, but they are just a little bit better. The Saint Cloth of the Phoenix on Alfred's body is already devastated. The shoulder pads are broken, and the chest, shoulder armor, and legs of the Saint Cloth are all cracked. Blood is overflowing from the corner of his mouth, showing the severity of the injury. Bart and Tina were similar, but fortunately, the golden holy clothes on their bodies showed no signs of damage. Chapter 54. The exploding Taurus water droplets flowed down everyone's hair and cheeks. The thick and surging blood in the body made everyone's bodies as hot as furnaces, and the dripping water was evaporated by the hot breath just after it fell. Wisps of steam rose up, enveloping the silhouettes of several people. The air is dark, the water is dripping, the sea is churning. Alfred and others were panting continuously while floating on the sea. The vision in front of them has begun to blur. It is obvious that everyone is exhausted to the extreme, and their willpower has begun to show that they are not concentrated enough. Saint fighters are physically strong enough, and even the battles they fight at every turn are 100-day wars and 1000-day wars. Fighter. And most of the people don't have holy clothes. The gap is not even a little bit. Every confrontation and collision consumes the small universe that has cost everyone a lot of money is good enough to persist until now. But everyone was still full of resentment. Snapped. 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 Mephisto's applause came from next to my ear. Wow, 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 wow. It's wonderful. Your cooperation and fighting will really open my eyes. But unfortunately, it can only end here. The last 4 words fell, and with a bang, a blood-red figure immediately descended from the sky. With a violent breath, he rushed to the middle of the crowd in the blink of an eye, then flicked the cloak violently. Boom. The violent scarlet blood ripples hit the 4 directions like a torrent. Alfred, Ella, and others' eyes changed suddenly. It was too late to dodge. They could only use their hands to block in front of them. Without any ability to resist, the huge energy impact directly sent everyone flying. Boom, boom, boom. Everyone was like cannonballs, smashing countless waves along the way, and finally drew several kilometers of trenches on the sea surface, while Ella and Alfred, who were facing the Bay City with their backs, smashed into the city. Ella and Alfred crossed the city and smashed into a mountain on the edge of the city, splashing smoke and dust all over the sky. Bart fell obliquely, sliding for several kilometers on the wide ground road, plowing out long cracks. Puff. Bart lay in the pit, spitting out blood, and then he stood up suddenly regardless of his severely injured body, throwing away the gravel covering his body. Looking forward, the pupil shrank suddenly. I saw Mephisto holding a figure in the sea a few kilometers away. In the violent downpour, his pupils reflected the Athena that Mephisto was holding in his hand, and the one that had been raised. With sharp claws, he could already foresee Athena's ending in the next second. Athena, Bart's roar resounded throughout the world, and the flame of anger was instantly ignited in his heart. For some reason, Bart's body, which was already exhausted, surged with more powerful power again. The golden boots stomped on the ground. Boom. The whole city shook instantly, and with the huge impact, the ground was cracked, and Bart's figure burst out, turning into a golden light and rushing towards Mephisto, who was several kilometers away. The majestic sound waves exploded one after another, and at the moment of crisis, Bart broke through his own limit. In the blink of an eye, at the last moment when Mephisto was about to tear Athena apart with his sharp claws, Bart arrived in time. When the distance was still 100 meters away, he punched out directly. Giant horns. Boom. The Taurus horn composed of energy was shot out instantly, and the billowing green and gold energy swept across. Smiley face. Mephisto seemed to sense the crisis, and turned his head suddenly to the huge golden and green horn in front of him. Without hesitation, he immediately stretched out his fingers to point ahead. Wong. I saw a black-purple barrier immediately appear. In the next second, the giant horn was already in front of him. Rumble. The shocking explosion resounded through the sky, and the terrifying energy surge hit all directions wantonly, and Bart's body broke through the turbulent energy ripples and used his whole body's strength to punch the strongest punch. Click. The powerful fist shattered the energy barrier directly and continued to blast towards Mephisto, who blocked the punch by changing his fingers into palms. Boom. Heaven and earth seemed to freeze at this moment, as the two powerful forces collided and sent out an unimaginable impact. With the 3 of them at the center, a surge of golden and black intertwined beams of light shot straight into the sky in an instant, piercing through the sky, and the sky turned into a terrifying vortex with the beam of light circulating crazily. In the beam of light, golden and black lightning can be seen colliding and wreaking havoc with the naked eye. The sea below was churning even more violently, and there was even a crater with a diameter of tens of thousands of kilometers in the depression due to the impact. The wind howled, and the rain was repelled. The air is blurred and distorted due to the collision of the two energies, and everything involved will be crushed into fine powder. So strong. Such power. In the distance of the sea, a group of saint fighters broke through the sea and floated, with their hands in front of them to resist the terrible impact, ignoring the blood overflowing from the corners of their mouths. Looking forward from the corner of their eyes, their hearts were full of shock. No one thought that Bart would be able to burst out energy beyond his heyday even when he was exhausted. But this is a saint, a fighter who can always perform miracles. Can Bart perform miracles? Boom, boom, boom. The majestic energy kept impacting, the domineering air waves kept exploding, the sea kept churning, and the terrible lightning and thunder raged continuously. It lasted for a full few minutes, and the terrible beam of light finally dissipated slowly. 2 of the figures rushed out amidst the explosion of the air wave and faced each other silently hundreds of meters away. Taking a closer look, it was Mephisto and Bart, but the situation of the two was completely wrong. Mephisto was completely unharmed except for his right arm, which was scorched black. But Bart's situation appears to be very serious. Holding the blood-stained Tina in his hands, his chest was heaving and falling. There was a long scratch on his face, blood spurted out from the corner of his mouth, and his eyes were full of tiredness. Even his figure was faintly unstable in the strong wind, as if he was about to fall into the sea at any moment. The blow just now obviously caused great damage to Bart and Tina, almost completely losing their combat capabilities. I broke my promise. The world competition is so delicious. Chapter 55. The call of Athena. Everyone has basically lost their combat capabilities. It is barely enough to be able to fly. Ridiculous will, in front of real power, in front of the great Lord. What you firmly believe in is as fragile as a bubble. Don't you want to protect humans? Now, I want you to watch the humans you guard die in front of me. Wong. I saw Mephisto standing high in the sky with his right hand, and the boundless vast energy erupted instantly, and the tumbling clouds were suddenly torn apart by invisible forces. In the eyes of everyone who was frightened and angry, a terrifying black energy ball with a diameter of tens of thousands of meters suddenly appeared. The churning violent energy in it is enough to easily destroy a city or even a country. Mephisto looked down at the group of anxious boys and girls, smiled cruelly, and gently waved his arms downward. Boom! In an instant, the end came. The air wave exploded, and the 10,000-meter dead black energy ball blasted towards the distant city of the bay like a meteorite. It looked like the energy ball was quite huge, but it landed at an astonishing speed, only 30 seconds. After 30 seconds, hundreds of thousands of lives in the city would be lost. "No!" Elvis roared angrily. The faint light in his eyes immediately lit up. His body was surrounded by terrifying lightning, and the air wave burst. He rushed into the sky and dropped a black energy ball. Boom, 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 boom. Air waves exploded one after another, followed by 10 piercing the sky with faint rays of light. Bart and Tina, who were extremely weak, looked up at the backs of their companions. They looked at each other and smiled, squeezing their bodies again. Energy. Boom. The 12 young saints, with firm belief, raised their fists with blood stained on their faces and collided with the huge energy ball of death. Rumble. The sky burst out like a torrent of ripples instantly, and the turbulent wind raged. Every saint fighter bombarded the energy ball with his fist, and the terrible black electric light raged wildly, destroying people's bodies crazily. Even if the saints are physically strong to the extreme, they are constantly being impacted by this violent force. Poof! Everyone spat out a mouthful of blood, but they still gritted their teeth and couldn't retreat. However, everyone's efforts only made this huge death energy ball stop for a moment. Then it still pressed down towards the city, at most at a slightly slower speed. Not only that, people in the city have already seen this scene. I thought I was out of danger, but I didn't expect the crisis to come. People no longer knew what to say. They raised their heads and stared blankly at the huge black energy ball that could cover the sky and the sun, as well as the tiny figure trying to stop it under the energy ball. "Mom, are we going to die?" In front of the windowsill of an apartment, a little girl in a red princess dress was in her mother's arms, raising her head and asking innocently. The young mother hugged her daughter, gently asked the little guy's head, and said, "No, we won't die. We have a group of brave young guardians protecting us." On the side, the handsome father hugged his wife and daughter, silently looking up at the sky. This scene happened in every corner of the city, in every house. Some are desperate, some are broken, and some are numb. But more people are more willing to believe in the group of saint fighters, or in other words, believe in the great Athena. "Come on, guys, you're the best." "Fuck that guy." Younger people don't think so much. They have watched the shocking battle with their own eyes, and the fire in their hearts has been aroused, and they can't help but roar in the face of the strong wind. What death is, all forgotten after the adrenaline rush. They just want to see that group of powerful young saints blow up that ugly demon. Under the eyes of hundreds of thousands of pairs of eyes, the saint fighters are still struggling to explode their strength, and the powerful energy collision tore the clothes of the gods to pieces. However, no matter how hard they are working, the death energy ball shot by the Heavenly Father still slowly falling towards the city. Damn it, I can't hold it anymore. Finally, Elvis and the others completely lost their power. Their eyes filled with unwillingness, like dolls who had lost their power one by one let go of their hands, opened their arms and fell with the energy ball. Is it over? We still failed Athena. Everyone closed their eyes, as if waiting for death to come. Time seemed to start to slow down, and everyone recalled in their minds the experience of awakening the small universe, cultivating in another world, the cruel practice and teachings they experienced. Family, friends, and images flashed like slides. Just when everyone thought everything was coming to an end, Athena's gentle voice suddenly came from next to their ears. Don't give up, everyone. You are saints, and the faith of saints will not give up under desperate circumstances. Athena, everyone suddenly opened their eyes, and in the vast and boundless universe, there was an unimaginable great force inexplicably. In the dim sky and billowing clouds, patterns composed of stars suddenly appeared, and the sacred constellations seemed to be calling for everyone. In a trance, the cries and will of the saints of all ages who fought battles under adversity emerged in their minds. Elvis and the other boys and girls suddenly opened their eyes at this moment. Yes, we are saints. The monstrous will communicates with the stars, and the sky seems to be bright. The dim sky was painted with streaks of gold, and a small universe far surpassed the previous one emerged in the body. At this moment, everyone woke up. Boom! The majestic small universe is like a volcanic eruption, and Elvis's eyes reappeared the dazzling colors of his own stars. Drink! Everyone yelled angrily as if they were in agreement. Bright light bloomed from their bodies, and powerful forces gathered together to form a mysterious golden circle with a diameter of tens of thousands of meters to block in front of the Black Death energy ball. On that pattern, the constellations belonging to everyone can be seen with the naked eye. Chapter 56. Victory lions, unicorns, beluga whales, hounds, bears, sky arrows, fairies, and more. Rumble. The Black Death energy ball collided with the seemingly thin golden magic circle, and it came to a standstill. Wisps of light ignited on everyone. Not only that, but along with the ripples of light, shoulders, arms, thighs, and chests began to appear. Parts of a piece of armor. In the blink of an eye, a pair of armor appeared on everyone's body. These are the holy clothes belonging to their respective constellations. Some are bronze, and some are silver. With the saint cloth on his body, he was in harmony with the small universe, and everyone's aura began to soar even more. Holy cloth, is that Athena? Elvis was wearing the Leo gold saint cloth, looking up at the death energy ball. His eyes flashed a flash of light. Compared with bronze and silver, the lion gold saint cloth is undoubtedly more noble and gorgeous. Streamlined armor, thick shoulder armor, a golden helmet like a lion's head, a golden battle skirt at the waist, and 2 green gemstones like lion's eyes on the left and right sides of the chest. Just the right fit. This is an unprecedented experience, powerful, unparalleled powerful. Wearing the golden holy clothes, he feels that his small universe is several times larger than before, and it is very active. He even felt that he could defeat himself without the holy clothes with one punch now. The sudden appearance of the golden holy cloth, plus Athena's gentle call before, it is not difficult for him to think of something. Are we sanctioned by the cloth? It's really a happy thing. But before that, we have to solve the thing in front of us first. Guys, let that show the power of the saint who guards Athena. Elvis laughed boldly. The others also grinned, and Bart was not to be outdone. Don't underestimate us, devil. Boom. The small universe that emerged from the dark became more and more frenzied, gathering the powerful small universe of the 12 saints to burst out with power that even changed Mephisto's color. Originally high Mephisto's face was full of disbelief. How is this possible? Even if he knew that this battle was just a stepping stone. And he also knew that this battle was just to let these little devils grow up, but this growth was too unreasonable. If he was able to play with these brats wantonly before, then the energy suddenly emanating from these brats has begun to threaten him faintly. Athena is openly cheating on these brats. Athena, in Mephisto's heart, it was a grudge, it was a bitterness. He clearly felt the danger, but he couldn't kill him. Forget it, it's important to hug his thigh. Let's give himself a gorgeous exit. Acting is also a technical job, but fortunately, the devil is professional in this respect. Especially for the demon boss, don't be too simple. There were a lot of interactivities, but it was only a momentary thing. On the surface, it showed the shock of the sudden eruption of powerful power in the face of Elvis and others. Sure enough, facing Mephisto's horrified expression, the fighting spirit of Elvis and others soared. Smiley face. The powerful small universe gathered is becoming more and more terrifying. The burst of golden energy has colored the sky and the earth, and the radiant rays of light have pierced through the thick clouds. The Black Death energy ball slowly disintegrated in front of this terrifying and sacred energy. This is undoubtedly the dawn of victory for everyone. At this time, the voices of Alfred and Ella came from everyone's ears. Don't forget about us, Boom. The mountains on the edge of the city below trembled, and the golden and red rays of light pierced through the surface of the mountains, and the two beams rushed to the sky with boundless power in the blink of an eye. Skipping over Elvis and the others, the two beams instantly pierced through the death energy ball with boundless aura. The two went forward bravely, penetrated the death energy ball, caused the black death energy ball to undergo a qualitative change, collapsed, squeezed, and finally exploded. Boom! The earth-shattering energy explosion resounded throughout the world, and the terrifying energy torrent raged and washed and impacted in all directions, and the huge wind that was rolled up raged and even spread to the city below. The houses and buildings in the city are crumbling. Everyone is lying on the ground tightly, hiding under the table, under the bed, feeling the horrible howl of the wind outside the broken glass windows, hearing the sound of the window beating wildly, and the heart is full of tension. Everyone is very clear about what this battle represents. This is a battle that determines their own lives. People began to pray. The young people who had forgotten their fear because of the adrenaline surge of the battle were also recovering their sanity under the strength of the disaster. In front of the window, on the balcony to shoot, to cheer for the saints. They're just a bunch of young boys and girls who fear death. I also really saw the cruelty of war, the disregard and cruelty of demons for human life, and realized that death is close at hand. Everyone is praying that the saints can bring victory. I don't know how long the explosion and the energy torrent washed over the ripples, and finally, it calmed down slowly. It took a few minutes for the trembling people to calm down before they realized it. They turned their heads and looked out the window. The originally dark tone had also been brightened. The torrential rain also stopped. After hesitating for a moment, people climbed up from under the table and bed, walked out of the window and balcony, and looked at the sky with their hands between their eyebrows. At this time, the dark clouds in the sky have dissipated. The hot sun hangs high, and the warm and dazzling sunlight spreads all over the land and ocean, illuminating the subdued sea so beautifully. Everyone stared at the sky in a daze. Under the sunlight and shadow, they could see those teenagers and girls wearing noble and gorgeous holy clothes floating in the sky, their cloaks and hair fluttering in the wind. The refraction of sunlight produces colorful prints. At this moment, everyone seemed to see in a trance. Win! Those boys beat the devil. Wow, they won. We agreed. That demon was wiped out. Ha ha ha, we are safe. Wow, you guys are the best. That's cool, guys. You're the best guardians in the world. Huge waves of cheers soared into the sky. I don't know why I can't upload mouse photo. The format is wrong. I searched for a lot of pictures. Helpless. Chapter 57. The reappearance of the black-bellied goddess, however, the protagonists who saved the city were not particularly happy at this time. Elvis was wearing a lion's golden holy garment and a white jade cloak fluttering in the wind. Looking up at the dazzling sun in the sky, he frowned. We killed that demon? You should know it's impossible. Isla's helmet and visor, who also wore the Aquarius golden cloth, disappeared with golden ripples and shook her long silver hair. Sanzabu put his right hand on his chest, closed his eyes again. A little cinnabar was looming between his brows and said peacefully, he should have felt Athena's small universe. Everyone understood immediately. Humph, as expected of a devil. He ran away at the slightest whiff of the wind. Santos Ursa Major, who was strong and majestic, said dismissively. Bullying the weak and fearing the hard is not only unique to human beings, it includes all races in the universe. It was better than that demon feeling Athena's breath and running away in despair. They were not surprised at all. After all, in front of a powerful demon, in front of the main god, he is as weak as an ant. This demon is a great threat. We must find out his origin. His purpose may be against us, or there may be other reasons. He is too dangerous for the earth. Tina shook the red hair, said seriously. Yes, although this guy is afraid of Athena, he still poses a considerable threat to us or the earth. Elvis nodded and looked at Alfred after speaking. You are from the sanctuary? Does Athena have an oracle? Athena said that a crisis is coming, and the demon named Mephisto may be the source of this crisis. So we sent us to the earth to find the awakened saints. We need to create a new sanctuary on the earth, and an ancient golden saint will command us as a line of defense to protect the earth. An ancient gold saint? Elvis and others who didn't know the situation were shocked. The golden saint of the previous generation is still alive? Elvis looked at Alfred in shock. Seeing everyone's expressions, Tina smiled lightly. When they heard the news, they were as surprised as Elvis and the others. After all, everyone originally thought that the Saint Seiya Legion had all fallen after following Athena in the battle against the powerful gods on the ancient battlefield of the gods, causing Athena to fall into a deep sleep and not wake up until this era. So, the powerful and unfamiliar small universe that I felt earlier belonged to that golden saint? Ella thought. Let's go. I think she should be waiting for us. Alfred glanced down at the huge crowd of cheering crowds pouring into the streets of the city below. Where? Pacific. As soon as the voice fell, a bang sound burst, and Alfred's figure turned into a crimson beam that tore through the sky and flew away into the distance. Boom, boom, boom. The other saints followed closely behind, and the 14 figures disappeared into the blue sky in the blink of an eye. It left behind the enthusiastic sound waves of the people in the city. As for how much the follow-up of this war will have on the human world, it is not what the saints care about. At this level, the saints have broadened their horizons and are concerned about another level of crisis. Somewhere deep in the Pacific Ocean. I don't know when there was a huge city. This city is composed of hundreds of island groups, and it was formed and cast using the power of the Supreme Stalwart. It is a sanctuary belonging to the Earth. This sanctuary is somewhat different from sanctuaries in other dimensions. But the styles are similar, and there are 12 temples, star towers, baths, star hills, etc. are all available. The majestic city covers a very large area. It is a holy place protected by Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war. The stars and clouds are separated by sacred areas. It is a holy mountain archipelago isolated from the world. It is impossible for the unit's reconnaissance satellites to discover that the sanctuary full of the will of the gods is hidden by dozens of barriers, without any interference from the enemy. It is the holy land where the saints who protect the peace on the earth live, and it is the last stronghold to protect the peace on the earth. Except for the saints and other fighters and related people, other people are not qualified to step into the sanctuary. And on the roof of the Pope's temple in the sanctuary, Kyle, the incarnation, is wearing the ancient traditional black and gold Pope costume, which fits the figure just right, with golden hair dancing in the wind, and a symbolic pearl on his neck necklace. There was also an old man standing in front of her. This old man is surprisingly Mephisto, who should have escaped after a fierce battle with the 14 saints in the Gulf of California. But now it's disguised as a human form. At this time, Mephisto looked at Kyle in amazement, feeling the powerful oppression that was only inferior to Athena, and slowly spoke while suppressing the turbulent waves in his heart. You are the spokesperson of the goddess Athena, the Pope who commands the sanctuary? Devil, you are good at creating the sanctuary. If it weren't for Athena's decree, the moment you step into the sanctuary, you will surely fall. Knowing that Mephisto didn't see through her avatar identity, Kyle would not be so stupid as to say it. He spoke indifferently. The terrifying aura emanating from his body really made Mephisto extremely vigilant. He didn't doubt Kyle's identity. If he felt the mysterious, ancient, vast, sacred, and inviolable in Athena, then what Kyle showed was like the world falling apart. The strong murderous intent. He just took a look at this kind of murderous intent, and he felt terrified. Mephisto could even see the terrifying purgatory full of corpses of ancient gods from behind Kyle in a trance. That was the aura only a true god-slayer possessed. With the city of Mephisto, he immediately understood the character of the spokesperson of Athena in front of him, cold and tough. It is very likely that a disagreement will kill someone. Hell, there is such a guy in this world? Don't be an old antique who survived the battle of the gods. Mephisto's heart pounded. When dealing with this kind of monster, you really have to be careful all the time. Chapter 58. Fudge Godslayers are terrifying creatures no matter where they are. Not to mention the old monster in front of him who didn't know how many years he lived. Maybe he lived longer than himself, thanks to Mephisto, because Athena went to the earth to understand some things. He didn't make any arrogant gestures. Otherwise, not to mention white gloves, it would be considered lucky to be alive. Mephisto was secretly lucky, and on the surface he naturally looked gentle and harmless to humans and animals. My lord, I have completed the task assigned by the goddess. I don't know what else I need to do in the future. You have completed the task that Athena gave. You can go back, but the group of children will come to you later. Kyle still maintained an indifferent attitude. Mephisto nodded. I will wait for them to come in hell, and then I will warmly broadband those children. Of course, if the goddess Athena wakes up, you can help me convey that I am happy to do things for the goddess. The subtext in the words is obvious. Kyle's eyes moved slightly, flashed an inexplicable look, and glanced at the distant sky. I will help you convey that those children are here. You can leave. It's a pleasure to meet you. Then goodbye, His Excellency the Pope. Mephisto bowed gracefully, then turned around and walked back. As he walked, his figure slowly turned into a phantom until it disappeared. At the same time, the shimmering light of the enchantment covering the sanctuary was also slowly extinguished. Kyle stood on the rooftop, slightly surprised in his heart. This Mephisto actually really intends to take refuge in himself? Did you notice something? In her plan, this Mephisto, and even the whole is a dungeon for newborn saints to experience. There are countless demons in the whole hell, even those who are not inferior to Mephisto. There are also many evil gods. It is also a good place for saints who have the sixth sense, or even the seventh sense to practice. And Mephisto will be terminated by the saints as the biggest villain boss, and his role will end here. Mephisto wants to rebel? No chance at all. This is the cruel reality. The fate of the weak is arranged by the strong. Smiley face. Kyle wrote the ending for Mephisto. Justice defeats evil. What a beautiful script. But Mephisto seems to be aware of something. Afraid? There are also, but more is the way of survival. Follow the stronger. Need to rewrite the script? Kyle's eyes moved. Mephisto, there is still a good use value. It is not worthwhile to throw it away so simply. While thinking, the protagonists have arrived outside the sanctuary. She raised her head slightly and looked at the distant sky. The 14 rays of light cut through the air and flew towards the Pope's temple. After a while, Bart and others were seen slowly falling in front of her from the air. Everyone is wearing holy clothes, and after a century of war, there is still that majestic and surging aura that has not dissipated. When everyone saw Kyle, felt the unfathomable and vast small universe, and the Pope's costume, they couldn't help showing a little surprise. Alfred, who had seen Kyle, immediately knelt down on one knee and said respectfully, "Master Kyle." Seeing this, the others also knelt down on one knee and lowered their noble heads. "Master Kyle, get up." Kyle's voice is different from that of Athena, who is more sacred, ethereal, and gentle, while the voice of Kyle's incarnation is lower and full of cold texture. The long blonde hair was attached to the Pope's robe along the shoulder blades. The voice seemed to contain wordless power, relying on everyone to stand up from the ground. Facing the eyes of everyone, Kyle said softly, "Athena is now in a deep sleep. I will become the Pope of the sanctuary and be the spokesperson of Athena to handle everything. This sanctuary serves as the Earth's barrier and is also responsible for selecting qualified children for training." The words didn't explain too much. It was simple and clear. Bart and the others looked at each other and nodded. At this time, Alfred suddenly said, "My lord, Athena said that the crisis has arrived. Is it the demon who fought with us before?" This is what he cares most about. For Alfred, this battle was undoubtedly a failure. Even if the demon escaped, it was only because they noticed Athena's small universe, and they did not defeat it by themselves. It's not that Alfred can't accept failure, but he can't accept that because of his failure, that powerful demon threatened the Earth. Similarly, this is something Bart and the others care about. Facing everyone's doubts, Kyle raised his white palm, and a holographic projection-like light curtain appeared above the palm. Above the light curtain was a purgatory world full of blood. This place is full of countless demons and undead, full of countless conspiracies, calculations, and war. And one figure attracted everyone's attention. With crimson skin, evil face, and the tattered cloak behind him, it is the demon Mephisto who fought in the Gulf of California before. Kyle explained, who, to you, for everyone. He is called Mephisto, a lord from the dimension of hell, one of the most powerful demons in hell. He is evil by nature, steals human souls, plays with souls, he wants only kills and attacks other worlds, and also likes an excellent and pure soul, to sign a contract and make it your slave. Countless years ago, he valued the human world and tried to occupy the earth and become the master of the earth. His power is almost irresistible. It's just that in the ancient times, there were countless outstanding strong men on the earth who resisted his invasion one after another, but his eyes have never left until now. After some answers from Kyle, everyone knew the existence of Mephisto. I also realized that Mephisto is basically the source of the crisis that Athena said. Sure enough, according to our previous guess, we should have noticed that Athena fell into a deep sleep, so I tried to take this opportunity to come to the world and try to capture the earth. Bart looked at the figure sitting on the evil throne full of skeletons on the light curtain with his hands on his hips and frowning. Others feel the heaviness too. Sanzabu thought about it. Master Kyle, what do you mean? There are other guardians of the earth. Chapter 59. Ex-Academy attacked. Kyle glanced slightly at Sanzabu's handsome face, secretly satisfied. Among the candidates she selected for the Saint Seiya, this one is the best in terms of talent and heart. It is also the one that is most suitable for Virgo. Wong, gently waving his hand. The light curtain turned into dandelion-like light particles drifting with the wind. Kyle continued, "That's right. From ancient times to the present, the earth is the most special one in this universe, and countless powerful evils covet it. Here, the earth has also given birth to countless amazingly talented guardians. Among them, the mages of Karma Taja's lineage contributed the most. Under the leadership of the Supreme Mage, they have been fighting against evil from other dimensions, but they have never interfered with the internal struggles between humans on Earth." Supreme Mage, everyone's eyes moved slightly. Hearing what the Pope said, they couldn't help but sincerely admire this group of mages who silently dedicated themselves to the Earth. Sure enough, there are still many secrets in this world that humans have never heard, especially those cruel truths. If one learns that as early as in human history, countless evil and powerful beings have been eyeing the Earth, even those with weak wills may collapse directly. In the future, you will have the opportunity to deal with mages. After a pause, Kyle continued, "But the most important thing for you now is to practice. I have seen your battles, and I appreciate your bravery and will. But in terms of fighting, you guys are a mess." The blunt lesson made many of them raise their brows, somewhat unconvinced. After all, in their minds, they have never fought Mephisto together. The biggest difference is strength. If they are at the same level, they are confident that even Mephisto will be easily defeated. Kyle was expressionless on the surface, but he was very satisfied in his heart. Everyone has their own unique character. What she wants is not a puppet, but a real saint. No matter who they face, a saint will remain proud. This is true even for being stronger than oneself. Only drive and ambition can grow faster. Cowardice only knows to agree, and fear of the strong is undoubtedly the weak, even if you have a strong body. Of course, she would not say this. Her mouth was still cold and taut. Unconvinced? For a saint, it is not only the small universe, willpower, but also your skills that determine victory. The strongest saint has always been. It is a skill that has been honed over and over again in the mountains of corpses and seas of blood. You are still far behind. After that, I will serve as your instructor and train you." The indifferent eyes swept over everyone one by one, and the expressions of everyone who watched couldn't help but change slightly. The strong sense of oppression and the overwhelming murderous intent made everyone palpitate, and it was difficult to breathe. They almost couldn't help but burst into a small universe to escape from here. It was thanks to everyone's willpower that they were tenacious enough to stand firmly in place. But even so, everyone couldn't help but set off shocking waves in their hearts. Only Sanzabu can maintain a calm enough state of mind. Is this the Golden Saint who is suspected to have participated in the Battle of the Gods? This sense of oppression is really amazing. Elvis the little lion stared at the Pope's indifferent eyes, gritted his teeth and thought to himself, "Hey, but this is good. My goal is to become the strongest gold saint under Athena. I'm a brave lion. If I'm trained by such a strong man, I'm bound to grow faster, right? I don't want to experience the powerlessness today." Elvis's eyes were full of heat. Not only him, but others also had the same thought. "Very well, I like the look in your eyes. If that's the case, let's start today." The corner of Kyle's mouth curled up slightly, revealing a trace of cruelty. As soon as the words fell, the pupils suddenly expanded a little, and an incomparably dazzling golden light bloomed in an instant. Boom. Ah. A scream came from Xavier Youth Academy Square. "Ah, siete, Logan. Can't you lighten up?" On the dilapidated steps in front of the school, Cyclops Scott's forehead was covered with sweat, and he looked at Logan, who was squatting beside him and roughly bandaging the wound on his arm with a look of displeasure. "If I knew it earlier, I might as well bandage it myself." Logan ignored the death stare. He tightened the bandage tightly and turned his head to look forward. At this time, Storm Lady Aululo in the X-Men uniform slowly fell from the sky. Her white hair was slightly curly, and her face looked slightly pale, a little tired. Seeing the gazes of Logan and Scott, she shook her head. "It's been repulsed. Pete and Alex are on patrol. Damn it, those are getting more and more rampant." Scott was captured by the ancient and mysterious Gold St. Kyle. Isabella was randomly deprived of her sense of hearing, and now she is used to reading lips, understood what Stormy Aurora said, and punched the steps beside her with a face full of resentment. Since the death of Professor Charles and Magneto, the Academy has been invaded and attacked more than a dozen times, both openly and secretly. Every time they teamed up to repel each other, another group of guys from other forces would come within a few days. Fortunately, I don't know why the other party didn't use powerful weapons, otherwise it would be somewhat difficult for the X-Men to protect the children of the Academy. But as the number of times increased, Scott, Storm, and Beast were not only exhausted, but also more or less injured. Scott also felt that there were not enough people. Several outstanding strengths were selected as X-Men candidates. At this time, everyone realized how important the existence of Professor X and Magneto was to them. It's a pity, Scott gritted his teeth, full of anger. Seeing this, Storm shook her head helplessly. After sighing, she glanced at the children in front of the dormitory window of the school who were sneaking over. She cheered up and continued, "There is good news too. Ruewin is in the Brotherhood. Bien has made a decision to send a group of people to the school to be stationed. At that time, we can relieve our pressure." Brotherhood, huh? Scott wanted to say a few words in disdain, but for some reason he took it back and snorted coldly. Chapter 60. Looking for Gretchen. Logan, who knew Scott's personality, patted him on the shoulder. "Okay, red-eyed boy, the professor is gone. We have to protect those children for him, don't we? And we are all mutants. Although we used to be rivals with different ideas, now we should overcome difficulties together." Logan from the soul of the future. Compared to the future, the current situation of mutants is already cannot be satisfied. At least Jean and most of the mutants are still alive. Scott curled his lips. "We are together. It is easier to be a target, and people can catch them all." Logan and Aurora looked at each other and smiled helplessly. With a half-smoked cigar in their mouths, they puffed out lightly. Logan clapped his hands, stood up and walked down the steps, and glanced at the man in front of him because of the battle. The devastated Academy turned around and continued. "Those people won't stop here. We can't stay in the Academy forever. We have to figure out a way. What else can I do?" Now those damned are focused on capturing mutants for experiments to gain power. Especially after the war in the Gulf of California, these people are even crazier. Scott took a deep breath. If the fall of Professor X and Magneto in Morocco represented the beginning of the complete decline of mutants, the world war that shocked the world in the Gulf of California a month ago completely made mutants the targets of all major forces. The powerful demon then summoned the powerful power of the meteorite, causing a huge crisis in all countries. In particular, it also triggered a series of thoughts. Can technology really make the Earth safe? Can the highest technology of human beings really defeat and even kill that powerful demon? The answer is naturally no. So, is there another way to go? Of course, the appearance of the God's Mansion undoubtedly opened up another path for human beings. That is evolution. Change human genes, rewrite fragile flesh, and evolve into a more powerful evolutionary. Mutants and superpowers are naturally the most important part of human evolution, or victims, but the major forces seem to be afraid of arresting mutants for inhumane experiments and being targeted by the Saints, so they also don't dare to arrest them blatantly. Smiley face. It's just a trial again and again, and the power of the weapon is getting bigger and bigger. Both Scott and Logan are very clear that if this continues, the Academy will be compromised sooner or later, and supplies are the most troublesome point. After all, the other party is not only here to tell, but also has a lot of secret methods. The surrounding supermarkets and farmers' markets have been controlled by people, and a lot of sleeping pills and some poisons have been put in food and water sources. They almost fell for the trick, and Hank had to go through the test every time he bought supplies, and not only that, but also let Logan, an immortal guy, taste it first. And the continuous fighting made the children gradually become anxious. A series of circumstances exhausted the X-Men. Therefore, everyone realized that they had to make changes. But in the current situation, it is not so easy to change. Many forces have already regarded them as meat on the felt board. Logan looked up at the sky with a cigar in his mouth and murmured, "We can only rely on ourselves. Maybe we need a mutant at the same level as Charles and Eric." The meaning is very simple. Mutants can become the current situation because of the fall of the two most threatening mutants. As a result, the governments of various countries are no longer afraid of mutants, so they raise their butcher knives. If the mutants have alpha-level mutants again, then human beings will definitely be afraid before restraining themselves. Storm Girl's eyes flashed, and she immediately thought of someone, and said in a deep voice, "Cheen, Cheen?" Scott frowned. The mutant with the highest level is known to be Cheen. Cheen can compete against the Phoenix Saint Seiya. Even if it is just awakened, it is enough to scare the forces of all countries. "We must find Cheen." Logan nodded. The location of the Qin is easy to find, but the current Qin is no longer the Qin we know, even if we found it. The Storm Girl didn't finish her sentence, but Scott and Logan already understood what they said next. After being blackened, Qin's personality changed drastically, full of violence, destruction, and desire. Even if they found Qin, they were not sure whether Qin would kill them. After personally experiencing the Double Phoenix battle, the three of Qin's strengths are well known to everyone. Even Logan, who has a super self-healing ability, has a high probability of being directly a fan. That's why they never came to the door. But now, they have no choice. For the sake of mutants and those children, Storm and Logan looked at Scott, and Scott fell silent in the eyes of the two. After a few minutes of silence, Scott spoke. The question now is, who will we go? No matter who among the X-Men left, the Academy's defenses would inevitably be weakened. This was a rather risky choice, even if Scott wanted to fly to Qin's side with his wings. But for the sake of the school children, he had to be cautious. You go, I and the others, as well as the mutants brought by Ruewen. I believe we can hold on for a while, Storm first said. She knew very well that if it was possible to bring Qin back, then Scott and Logan were the most likely. Scott and Logan's eyes met. Third day, Mystique Ruewen brought a group of mutants from the Brotherhood. These mutants are not weak, and some of them are at the beta level, which relieves a lot of pressure on the Academy. And Scott and Logan were able to leave with peace of mind. The two did not fly the Blackbird fighter. Whether it was the Blackbird fighter or Hank's follow-up plan to build a new transport plane, it was the last resort to transport the students away. So the two just got on their motorcycles. Rumble, with the roar of the engine, under the eyes of the X-Men, Riven, and other fraternity members, the two rode a motorcycle and left the Academy. Looking at the two people who disappeared at the end of the road, Ruewen, who was standing at the forefront, turned her head and glanced at Storm. Their courage is admirable. Mystique knew very well that the road ahead to find Gretchen would be full of thorns, and whether the two could return or not was still unknown. Storm smiled softly. X-Men, never afraid of sacrifice. Chapter 61. The Madwoman Piano, seeking first order. The heat is hot and the sun is shining brightly. The glare of the sun spread all over the earth, making the road full of yellow sand extremely hot. This long road is occasionally driven by a few cars. Rumble. At this time, the roar of the engine came from a distance, and the figures of two locomotives slowly appeared from the almost distorted hot air. The figure of the locomotive quickly passed by, and the powerful sound wave disturbed the gecko foraging on the yellow sand goby in the distance of the road. The gecko raised its head vigilantly and looked at the two big monsters that had gone away. I don't know how long it has been driving. The two locomotives suddenly turned around and headed towards the forked path on the left, and finally came to a remote place after more than 10 minutes. It is also full of loss, but there are layers of scrapped cars and old containers. The speed of the car slowed down, and there seemed to be no one here. Logan and Scott glanced left and right and couldn't help being shocked. Those scrapped cars came from various brands, and each car seemed to be crushed by something. Similarly, many car bodies are still stained with blood that has not dispersed. The strong smell entered the nasal cavity, making people sick. The two slowly drove along the road to the very center. There is actually a very exquisite house standing here. The architectural style of the house is very simple and very modern. It is completely separated from the surrounding environment and looks abrupt. And inside the open door, it was as if a terrifying beast opened its mouth, and once it stepped in, it seemed to be swallowed ruthlessly. Click, the two put down the pole with their feet, stepped off the motorcycle, and placed the helmet on the rearview mirror. I smell blood. It's strong. Be careful. Logan glanced at Scott on the side and warned. Scott nodded, suppressing the excitement in his heart, and walked towards the house step by step with Logan. The shoes made a creaking sound when they stepped on the dry and cracked luss. The two came to the gate, and there seemed to be a slight movement from inside. They stepped into the gate cautiously, and they could see that the inside of the house seemed a little empty, and the marble floor was shiny. Compared with the heat outside, the inside of the house seemed a little cool. On the wooden frames on both sides are some puppets with strange shapes, wearing combat uniforms and holding guns, but their faces are distorted, but their appearance is lifelike, just like real people. Especially the doll's eyeballs seemed to reveal a strange light, which made people feel chills. Scott and Logan couldn't help licking their dry lips. It looks a little weird here. I feel it too. It's so weird. The two experienced X-Men only felt their scalps go numb, as if they were being stared at by pairs of eyes. That feeling was simply horrifying. But in order to find Qin, the the two still walked slowly into the house. There are not too many decorative furniture inside, just normal American decoration, simple wooden frames, furniture, and sofas, and so on. Finally, the two of them walked to the hall. The hall was located on the west side and was very empty. There was a huge floor-to-ceiling window on the balcony of the hall. Outside the window were those vehicles and containers that were pressed together and scrapped. There seemed to be some graffiti painted on the whitewashed walls. These graffiti seemed to be drawn casually, and there was nothing that could be seen at all. Both Logan and Scott didn't care about the decorations, they just cared about where there was Gene. His eyes locked on the source of the sound, which was the east kitchen on the right of the two of them. There was a wine rack between the kitchen and the hall. The towering wine rack filled with red wine and foreign wine blocked the sight, so that the two could not see what was going on in the kitchen. Tread, tread, tread. At this time, the small voice inside disappeared, and instead came the sound of footsteps. Scott and Logan didn't dare to take a breath. They just looked at the intersection in front of them. The footsteps were getting closer and closer. Finally, a figure came out of it, and when they saw this person, their pupils shrank suddenly. Why you? Scott looked at the shirtless boy holding a large glass in his hand in disbelief. This boy was surprisingly the boy who fought against Gene in the small town of Morocco, Alfred. Logan was also full of surprises. According to the information Hank searched, this should be the place where Gene lived, and it has never changed. How could this person be here? Alfred was not surprised to see the two with the juice in his hand, but took a big sip, skipped the two and walked to the hall, sat down on the sofa, and saw the strong and perfect muscle shape at a glance. However, some parts of the body appeared to be bruised. It was like being beaten by someone. Sitting on the sofa, facing the two people who were full of shock and doubts, Alfred drank a sip of his freshly squeezed orange juice, put the quilt on the glass table in front of him, and squinted at the two. You are here to find that woman of? He knew the relationship between the two of them and that crazy woman. Yes, why are you here? Scott couldn't bear to ask first. Zero, this is where I live. Why do you think I'm here? Alfred frowned slightly. But this, Scott stammered and didn't know what to say, especially when he saw the boy's bare upper body and bruises on his body. It was hard not to think of something. However, his mind was directly penetrated by Alfred, but Alfred's character was too lazy to explain. Instead, he simply said, I advise you to leave. That crazy woman is not the one you know. It is impossible for you to want her to go back. Scott opened his mouth to say something, but was stopped by Logan's hand. Logan's soul comes from the future, and his personality has become very calm. He seems to have seen something. He pulled Scott, sat down on the sofa beside him, and said in a deep voice, We have a reason to come. We have to take the piano back. You want to court death. I won't stop it. I just don't want you to ruin my good mood today. Alfred shook his head, picked up the t-shirt from the sofa beside him and put it on, then lay down on the sofa, picked up the remote control beside him, and turned on the TV. He is very tired now and doesn't bother to talk, mainly because he was beaten by the Pope for a month in the sanctuary, so it's no wonder he isn't tired. Chapter 62. The scary Gene, First Order requested, at this time. In front of the LCD TV was the voice of a hostess. At present, the well-known rich man Tony Stark disappeared a week ago. So far, the military has dispatched a large number of people to search. The Stark Group has issued a reward. If anyone can provide clues or location, they will get $15 million. The reward, but as of today, no one can provide useful clues. Stocks of the Stark Group continued to fall following the disappearance of Tony Stark. That is missing? He heard the news just after turning on the TV, which made Alfred a little surprised. Although he didn't pay much attention to the news of people like Tony Stark, he also understood that the disappearance of this man shocked the whole United States and even the whole world. News. After all, the size of Stark Group's 680 in the world is also terrifying. The industries involved are not only the military industry, but almost all walks of life in the world are involved. However, Alfred was only slightly surprised, and then changed the channel. He didn't care about what was missing. He only cared about how to grow up under the teaching of the Pope. He is naturally unwilling to admit defeat, and he has grown rapidly in the past month. In the almost harsh and cruel training and battles, he has mastered many tactics of the Phoenix constellation, and the small universe has greatly improved. However, he is not the only one growing up. The others are also improving rapidly. Especially Sanzabu, Elvis, Ella, and Bart are not inferior to him at all. As expected of the 12 constellations of the zodiac, the talent is indeed stronger than others. It's just that Alfred doesn't care about bronze or gold. He just wants to become the strongest saint. Bronze and gold are just a title. As long as he is strong enough, the bronze saint can also evolve into a golden saint, and even the Pope the sacred garment that the adults said. The terrifying aura in Alfred's eyes flashed past, causing Logan and Scott, who were sitting beside them, to notice suddenly, and they couldn't help being startled. Scott was even so scared that he stood up and made a defensive posture. Alfred turned his head in surprise, with a question mark expression on his face. What is this man doing? Logan covered his forehead and pulled Laskett's sleeve with a helpless look. The latter smiled dryly, knowing that he had done something stupid, sat down quickly, and apologized. Sorry, just now you suddenly let go. The breath made me react instinctively. Before coming here, he encountered dozens of ambushes and battles, large and small. It can be said that the inner vigilance has reached the extreme, and the instinct will be activated whenever there is a disturbance. Smiley face. Not to mention the terrifying aura that Alfred unconsciously revealed just now. Alfred stared at Scott. His eyes moved. Forget it. The crazy woman is back. You better be careful. She is very unstable now. Jean is back? Scott and Logan stood up with complicated expressions. Excited, surprised, confused, fear? Have it all. Wong. At this time, outside the door, a ray of crimson fire rushed in suddenly. Logan and the two didn't react at all. They just felt a blur in front of their eyes, and saw Jean's figure suddenly appeared in front of them as the fire exploded. Wearing a white short-sleeved shirt and sweatpants, her burgundy hair is getting more and more bright red, and there are black eyeshadows on the edges of her eyes, which seems to have an alternative dark-style beauty. His eyes are calm, but when he is calm, it seems that there is a hidden volcano. Once it erupts, it will destroy the world. Jean. The moment they saw Jean, Scott and Logan couldn't help screaming, especially the former, who couldn't help but stepped forward and stretched out his hand to touch Jean's cheek. However, Logan noticed that Jean's originally calm eyes immediately became sharp and violent, and he was shocked in his heart. Scott. He quickly crossed his hands in front of Scott, and sure enough, the next second, a terrible red light came into view. Boom! The crimson energy burst out from Jean's body like a torrent and hit Logan's arms heavily. The powerful impact and pain distorted Logan's face. Not only that, but the two of them shot backwards like cannonballs. And go. Rumble. Along the way, a huge hole was knocked out of the old wine rack, kitchen, and piles of scrapped vehicle containers, and finally fell on the lush ground 200 meters away. The sky was full of dust and smoke, and the liquid of red wine and foreign wine flowed all over the ground. Puff. Scott, who was pressed by Logan and suffered a huge impact, only felt that his internal organs seemed to be displaced, and couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Ahem, get up. You are going to crush me to death. Scott moaned in pain, and quickly pulled Logan off his body. Logan fell to the side, with his arms propped on the ground, and he also groaned in pain. When Scott heard that, he turned his head and looked over. When he saw Logan's arms that were almost scorched black and almost exposed silver bones, his pupils shrank suddenly. Logan, you. Don't look at me with that look, red-eyed boy. I'm not gay. Logan sneered and sat up with difficulty. Just now, the impact not only made his arms almost scrapped, but even the bones of his whole body were hit. Smashed quite a bit. Fortunately, the super self-healing ability allows the broken bones to automatically repair, but the self-healing and repairing of the flesh and blood of the arms is extremely slow, as if some power is eroding. This made Logan sink in his heart. Red-eyed boy, be careful not to get hit by Jean. I don't want to take 5.0 of your ashes back. Don't worry, I will definitely take your ashes back first, Scott retorted subconsciously, looking at the Jean floating out of the huge hole in the house in front of him, stood up immediately and handed Logan pull-up, glancing at the squirming and repairing arms of Logan's granulation. How are you? It's not very good. Jean's strength is a bit strange. If you are hit, you will really lose even your ashes. Logan shook his head. Scott frowned. The professor said that Jean has a very huge power in her body since she was a child. It was also shown in the battle in the small town of Morocco. That power seems to be able to annihilate all matter. This is troublesome. Please make the first order. I don't want to be too hip. Chapter 63. Struggling, although the two had already prepared for the worst, when they really saw China looking down on them with a cruel smile, they still couldn't help but feel pain in their hearts. The once beloved woman wanted to draw their swords at each other at this moment. This kind of pain literally cut their hearts like a knife. Jean, don't you really know me? Have you forgotten the little things we used to have? Forgot the time with those kids at school? Forgot the professor? Scott raised his head and said affectionately. However, when he said the professor, he didn't see Alfred sitting on the sofa in the house in the far hole shaking his head. Stupid, sure enough. With the two words Alfred uttered, Sheen became angry. Boom. In an instant, the color of the sky and the earth changed, and the originally blue sky immediately rolled with dark clouds, and a terrible gust of wind suddenly roared and raged, rolling up thousands of miles of yellow sand. A terrible breath swept across the world, and the monstrous red energy washed away like a torrent. Her gin-red hair stood on end with the strong wind, and her eyes were flickering with fire. Behind her, a phoenix phantom made of crimson energy emerged, and the breath of death permeated her heart. Accompanied by Sheen's cold and merciless voice, resounding through the sky. Professor? The professor you speak of imprisoned me in the dark world. I can only feel the darkness and loneliness. If he dies, you must die with him. Drain, the phoenix chirped, and Sheen looked down at Logan and Scott, with the flames of hatred in her eyes, stretching out her arms like a phoenix spreading its wings. Rumble. The ground was trembling, and the crazily shaking ground, accompanied by the raging red phoenix spreading its wings, swooped down on Logan and Scott. If it is hit, the only ending is to be erased. Even if Logan has a super self-healing ability and has the hardest metal in the world, he cannot escape. There was nothing Logan could do about such an attack. He could only turn his head to look at the sluggish Scott, stretched out his hand and slapped him on the shoulder, and shouted, "Scott!" The latter was awakened, and seeing the crisis approaching, he instinctively pressed his glasses on the frame and used his ability. Boom! Two surging red light beams erupted from the glasses, and the powerful red energy beams pierced the sky, collided with the huge phoenix, and burst out undoubtedly unparalleled terrifying fluctuations. The two energies continuously sputtered sparkling energy sparks, and the air was shaken by the two energies and rippled. The earth was affected by the two kinds of energy, and the amplitude of the vibration became larger and larger. Scott's forehead was already bulging with blue veins, and his handsome face was distorted. He had already limited contact with his eyes and output at full power, so the pressure he brought naturally didn't have to be too much. The ground under his feet had begun to crack a lot due to the strong energy, and even Logan beside him was forced to take a few steps back. Putting his hands in front of his body, Logan's eyes were full of shock. So the red-eyed boy is so powerful at full power? However, when he saw Scott's painful expression, he immediately remembered the other party's ability. The opponent's eyes are connected to another different space to obtain energy, and the eyes are used as the fulcrum to output energy, but the energy shock wave is too violent, and the full power release will cause huge pressure on the eyes. If it lasts for a long time, it will even burn the eyeballs. Therefore, special red quartz eyeglasses are necessary to limit and block particle energy. Now, Scott's painful expression must be the severe pain caused by excessive pressure on the eyeball. No, we can't go on like this. Logan immediately stepped forward decisively and ran towards the direction of Sheen with full acceleration, staring at the huge pressure and fluctuations generated by the collision of the two energies. Before approaching the Sheen with about tens of meters, Logan's right foot hit hard. As soon as he stepped on the ground, the powerful force shook the ground to cracks, and his body suddenly jumped up, rushing towards the piano floating tens of meters high. However, before Logan got close to Sheen had already reacted. She looked at Logan with contemptuous eyes, and the surging mental power poured out instantly, fixing Logan in midair. "I remember you." Sheen tilted her head and looked at Logan with her arms outstretched in front of her. She had the same memory as the main character, so she naturally knew who Logan was. "You seem very interesting." "Sheen, this is not you. You won't do this." Regardless of the powerful force acting on him, which was wearing away his own flesh and blood, he tried to call out to Sheen's personality. You will always be in my heart." "It's that kind, brave Gretchen. You said that you should protect those children forever, just like the professor. College kids are under threat right now and we need you." Logan was affectionate, and his tough face softened. Those shouts came into Sheen's mind, causing Sheen's face to change suddenly. "Damn it, shut up," boom. The sound of rage was accompanied by a terrifying squeezing force, causing Logan's arms and feet to twist, making creaking movements. Screeching sound. Logan's eyes widened suddenly, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The terrible pain made even a tough guy like him unbearable. Damn, seeing the appearance of 680 Logan in the distance, Scott gritted his teeth and continued to insist, and even faintly continued to increase the power, but then his eyeballs seemed to be stinging as if they were about to be melted. Rumble. The originally thick beam of red energy particles was a little bigger, and the terrifying energy forced the phoenix back a little, and even dimmed the phoenix phantom a little. Finally, a shocking explosion resounded through the sky. Boom. The phoenix was finally destroyed and exploded by Scott's full power output, and the red energy particle rays continued to shoot at Sheen, whose face was full of struggles. Caught off guard, Sheen was shot by this energy particle, and her figure was thrown backward like a cannonball. The long red particle ray lengthened several kilometers and finally fell heavily on the ground, rolling up yellow sand and dust all over the sky. A ray of red light flashed through Scott's eyes, his legs softened, and he knelt down in the cracked ground, ignoring the sharp pain from his eyes, and looked forward. Sheen. Plop. At this time, Logan, who lost his power control, also fell from the air to the ground. Fortunately, his powerful self-healing ability allowed his distorted parts to recover automatically. Chapter 64. The Wolverine Who Blocks His Life, for First Order. How are you, red-eyed boy? Logan stood up and twisted his neck. Hearing the crisp sound, he looked at Scott kneeling on the ground and frowned. Scott nodded and struggled to stand up. Apart from being able to emit particle shockwaves, the ability endowed him with good physical fitness, and his recovery ability was far superior to ordinary people. Otherwise, the resonance of the berserk rays would have made him body organs burst. Go and see Sheen. I didn't keep my hand just now. Just as soon as he finished speaking, he found that the surrounding air seemed to be a little thicker, and wisps of crimson light were spreading on the ground and in the sky. Logan caught a glimpse of a figure floating in the sky in the distance, shrugged his shoulders and said bitterly, I don't think your strike seemed to work at all. I can activate the ability again. Scott stared at the beloved. Forget it. It may not be effective if you use it, but we have nothing more to do. Scott sighed, and the two wanted to call back Sheen's main personality, but obviously the effect was not that great. It was more to make the dark personality more furious. He had no doubt that the dark personality wanted to tear his thoughts apart. Logan looked thoughtfully at the boy sitting on the sofa watching TV in front of the hole in the house. Maybe we can ask him for help. I think he's been kind enough to be indifferent to us. Scott was hopeless. At the beginning, it was Professor Charles and Magneto who took him to the town in an attempt to control each other, which led to the subsequent shocking war. They rushed to the door today, and he was quite surprised that the other party didn't kill him. Now that Logan wanted to ask the other party for help, Scott thought that Logan's head had just been smashed. Try it. After all, the situation can no longer be broken. Logan grinned. He stood still and called out to the house. Hey buddy, I think we need your help. I know you can hear. I know you have reasons not to help us, but no matter how much Charles and Eric have done, I believe you, as a saint selected by the goddess, have the qualities of kindness, don't you? Glancing at the approaching Sheen in the distant sky, with an increasingly indifferent and tyrannical expression, he continued in a sharp tone. There are a total of 120 children in the academy, and they are now facing danger. Smiley face. If those children are taken away, that will usher in the most brutal experiment. I don't know if you can read my memory. If you can do it, you can try to read my memory. Believe me, I'm not lying, Boom. The moment he finished speaking, Sheen, like of death, had descended. His eyes turned dark, and there was only ruthless indifference and cruelty inside. She spread her arms out. The surging power of the phoenix swept towards the surrounding space layer by layer like a boundless wave. The earth collapsed and cracked, and the yellow sand rolled up thousands of miles away was spinning and lasing like bullets. Falling stones, scrapped cars, and containers were decomposed and annihilated by the terrifying force of the phoenix. Boom. The heavy and terrifying pressure was overwhelming, causing the ground under the feet of Scott and Logan to crack again and even sag. The huge pressure made the two people's legs go limp, and they almost fell to their knees on the ground. But even so, the two people's waists had already begun to bend, and their bones were howling and screaming. See, hell, Sheen looks really scary when she's angry. Scott's face was flushed, and his voice was a little incoherent. Logan didn't care what Scott said at all. His eyes were fixed on the other side of the house, and the boy on the sofa remained motionless. Is there really no hope? You all deserve to die. Sheen's cold voice rang in the ears of the two, and in the next second, she pointed her hands at the two. Boom. The terrifying red torrent poured over the sky, and the majestic and violent energy disintegrated and smashed all the matter along the way. The two could only watch the death come. Finally, Scott and Logan closed their eyes in despair. In the end, they failed. However, just when the two thought they were going to die, a terrifying roar came from their ears again. Boom! Terrible explosions resounded through the sky, and the ground shook like an 8-magnitude earthquake. Scott and Logan fell to the ground without standing still. The two opened their eyes in surprise, and their pupils shrank suddenly. At this time, the world seems to be the end of the world. Everything around, neighbors, houses, containers, scrapped cars, and vegetation have all been destroyed by the terrible shock wave. The crimson energy rays poured out in all directions like mercury pouring down the ground. Cracks stretching for thousands of meters appeared on the ground under their feet, which were hideous like spider webs. And in front of the two of them, at some point, a tall and thick figure appeared. The hair danced continuously with the strong wind, stretching out the strong and muscular body in front of him, blocking the torrent of red energy of death. Centering on this young man, the fan-shaped ground behind him was intact, and the rest of the ground was nearly cut off by the force of the phoenix. They just happened to be out of this fan shape and survived. After being astonished, Logan smiled, and the child made a move at the most critical moment. Sure enough, the child who can become a saint has always had kindness in his heart, even though Afu, Wang Qian's, Red's personality seems indifferent. Logan turned his head and raised his eyebrows at Scott, who was also astonished, but the latter didn't care at all at this time. Scott's eyes were on Alfred's back, and a complex look flashed across his eyes. He never thought that Alfred would actually come to save them at this time. Professor, we still did something wrong after all. Scott sighed silently. Rumble. The terrifying ripples and shock waves did not last long, and gradually began to calm down. But at this time the world was still plunged into a terrible darkness. The yellow sand was raging, the dark clouds were rolling, and the piano was floating in the sky. With a cold breath, Qin looked down at Alfred, who was standing in front of Logan and the two of them, and his figure slowly fell down. Chapter 65. The spiritual world of violently demolishing the Qin. First order. Get out of the way, they're damned. Qin's voice was as cold as a bone-chilling wind. She instinctively didn't want to make a move on Alfred, and she had an inexplicable fondness for this boy. However, Alfred didn't care at all. He stared at the black phoenix Qin and said in an unquestionable tone, "Kill them, and you will completely sink into darkness. I will not sit and watch the birth of an existence more terrifying than demons. You want to betray me? All those who betray me will die." Qin was furious, and her angry voice almost burst into boundless waves of sound, rolling and impacting all directions. Betray? Alfred looked at a loss. It wasn't this woman who wanted to follow him at the beginning, so he had no choice but to get a house here for her to live in. The two had nothing to do with each other at all, so how could there be a betrayal? Alfred didn't even bother to think about the idea of this crazy woman. The pupils shrank slightly, and the eyes and demeanor immediately became sharp. A vast small universe instantly erupted from the body. With a tall and straight body, she stretched out her index finger to point at Qin, and said coldly, "You should go back to sleep." As soon as the words fell, I saw the index finger bloom with a dazzling golden light of 680. Phoenix Constellation Tactics, Phoenix Phantom Fist. The boundless air flow, accompanied by the majestic spiritual power, turned into a storm and swept towards Qin. In the storm, a golden beam of light flashed across the air, piercing the air. Qin didn't react at all, and the golden beam sank into the center of Qin's eyebrows. The latter felt that the world in front of him suddenly changed in an instant. Chaotic, collapsed, upside down, twisted, the dense murmurs and ravings came from the ear. Invading the will and soul of the Black Phoenix, Qin stepped back a few steps, holding his head in his hands, his expression distorted. I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back. This body is mine. It's mine. I want to destroy it. I want to destroy everything. Qin wailed and screamed, her sharp voice full of unwillingness. Scott and Logan stood up with nervous expressions. They didn't know that the familiar Qin would come back. In the end, the blackened personality couldn't bear the dense babble and torture. Fear grew, and she instinctively fell into a deep sleep to stop the pain. The dark personality fell into a deep sleep, and Qin's body slowly relaxed. She closed her eyes and stood there, her expression gradually becoming peaceful. Qin, Scott, and Logan's eyes flashed with excitement, and they ran towards Qin with their legs open. The energy of the tumbling sky also slowly dissipated, and the mighty wind subsided. Alfred ignored the appearance of the two rough men, calling for the Phoenix girl affectionately, and looked behind the three of them. The house he built had been completely smashed by the shock wave, and he couldn't help feeling a little regretful. Although the environment of this place is not very good, it also has a unique scenery. For this reason, he has spent a little time on furniture and diesel generators. In the end, it was gone, distressed. Fortunately, Alfred doesn't care about money, otherwise he would have to find that crazy woman to lose money. Just as Alfred shook his head and was about to leave, Logan's voice came from next to his ear. "Hey, buddy, she seems to have some problems." Alfred frowned and looked at Cheen, who stood upright but did not open her eyes. He walked up to Cheen. Regardless of Scott and Logan's puzzled and anxious expressions, a red light flashed in his eyes, and he stretched out his finger to lightly tap Cheen's forehead. Ong! In an instant, strange spiritual power erupted instantly. At this moment, the flow of time in the world in front of them seemed to slow down. The faces of Scott and Logan were frozen, and the world was like a broken calm water with little ripples. In the world in front of my eyes, the light seems to gradually dim, and night falls. The figures of Logan and Scott, Bifa, were swallowed up by the darkness, and in the blink of an eye, Alfred seemed to have come to another world. It was a night, and he was standing outside the gate of a school called Xavier Youth Academy. After 2 seconds of silence, he stretched out his hand and pushed open the iron gate of the fence, and walked along the road step by step towards the academy. It seemed to be raining, and there was a lot of water on the road. The lawns on both sides of the road were covered with water droplets. There was a huge lake not far away, and the scenery in the college, dotted with trees and vegetation, was extremely beautiful. However, standing here, Alfred did not feel the refreshment after the rain, but looked a little weird and gloomy. Compared with this gloomy environment, Alfred seems out of place standing here. He is like a round of sun emitting different light. Every step he takes on the road, the original muddy road under his feet, is more make a brightly colored footprint. Step by step, blink extra. Fear, depression, such a spiritual world, makes people look really irritated. Alfred whispered. In this spiritual world, he could feel the familiar despair and depression. Teenagers don't like it very much. Standing in front of the college dormitory building, the young man raised his head and looked at the closed windows of one of the upper floors of the building. The curtain was drawn on the window, only a corner was exposed, and the moonlight shone in along that corner. From this angle, one could see the paleness of the room. Ceiling. There, it is the source of this building that makes young people unhappy. The boy frowned. An array of fire flashed in his eyes. The huge mental power swept across the world, and he had an idea in his heart. He used the Phoenix Phantom Fist to force the dark personality into a deep sleep state, but the main personality was locked in this spiritual cage world and could not come out, and the body was not controlled by the soul's will. After a long time, it will directly fall into a state of suspended animation for such a long time, commonly known as vegetative. This is not the state that the young man wants to see, so the only way to reawaken the main character is. One of the methods is to step into the room and use affection, which can be family affection or love to affect and wake up. This method is obviously not with him. Then there is only one method that suits him. A sharp look flashed across the boy's pupils. Lift your right foot and step the ground. Boom. The boundless and mighty force instantly trampled the ground into horrible cracks, and the entire academy and even the spiritual world shook wildly. Not only that, the tyrannical red flames erupted from under the feet, sweeping in all directions. A roar resounded and raged, and terrible flames swept across, burning trees, vegetation, and roads to ashes along the way. Please subscribe. Chapter 66. Omega Mutant Phoenix Girl, 1 out of 10. The flames of the phoenix, as far as the eye can see, turned into a piece of scorched earth. It was dark, gloomy, and everything was burned to ashes by the flames. Not only the entire academy, but the entire world, all became a sea of flames. In this terrifying sea of flames, in front of Alfred, a figure curled up on the ground. She, who was originally immersed in the closed world, raised her head at this moment, her eyes full of surprise and disbelief. You, Cheen's main character, looked at the young man walking towards him step by step from the sea of flames, stuttering and didn't know what to say. You can go back. The young man looked at the soul of the main character, nodded in satisfaction, said something, and finally turned into a flame. The flame disappeared in place. Cheen was left alone, staring blankly at the sea of fire in front of him. The red flames in all directions turned her spiritual world into a sea of flames, but she didn't feel the slightest burning sensation. On the contrary, her whole soul now felt unprecedented ease and joy. The haze and fear in my heart for many years were burned like this. Qin seems to be born again. She stood up slowly, raised her head slightly and closed her eyes, feeling that it had never been so easy. Qin smiled, very happily. Thank you, she said something in a low voice, full of gratitude in her heart. The boy undoubtedly saved her bad life, cleansed her soul, and liberated her. Also, it's time to leave. Following the ripples in the sky, she opened her eyes here. But she was not in the spiritual world full of flames, but returned to reality. The originally tumbling dark clouds dissipated, and the sun's rays hanging high in the sky were still so dazzling. In a desolate land of yellow sand, the air became hot again. The blue sky is like the haze that has been swept away from the heart, wide and far away. Qin, are you okay? The concerned voices of Logan and Scott came to her ears. Qin lowered her head slightly, saw the familiar faces of Scott and Logan, and was a little dazed before her eyes. She laughed again. Scott, Logan, I'm back. Scott didn't speak, but stretched out his hands and hugged the piano. Very hard, tears were drawn from the eyes under the red quartz glasses. The woman he loved so much has finally returned. Logan stood aside, sighed slightly, and patted the shoulders of the two of them instead of extending his hand. Smiley face. The original feeling is also deeply buried in my heart. He is not a modern soul. He will return to the original world sooner or later. This place does not belong to him. Feeling the warm embrace, Qin also smiled and patted Logan's hand when she saw Logan's sad eyes. A few minutes later, the three of them restrained their emotions. Logan and Scott looked around and saw the endless yellow sandland. They couldn't help but looked at each other, realizing that the only vehicle had been sacrificed in the battle. How to go back? The nearest towns and cities seemed to be hundreds of kilometers away. Qin didn't care about this. What she cared about was the boy who saved her life, who had left at some point. It's a pity, but she still wants to thank her. But there will be opportunities in the future. Qin, we have to go back first, school? Scott seemed to remember the purpose of coming and said hastily. However, before finishing speaking, Qin planned. I already know, let's leave now as soon as possible. She has already read Scott's memory and has a general understanding of the current situation through the memory, so she is naturally more anxious. The professor died, and she had to protect the children in the school for the professor. Hungry, okay. Scott opened his mouth, but chose to shut up. Logan lit a cigar that symbolized victory and shrugged. The question is, how do we leave now? Leave this matter to me. Qin smiled slightly. In the suspicious eyes of the two, a powerful spiritual force suddenly acted on the three of them, and in the next second, they were seen flying into the sky and flying towards the distance. The figures of the three pierced the air, and in the blink of an eye, they had disappeared into the sky, leaving Logan's screams behind. Shet, can't you use the normal way? Uncle Wolf, even after 20 years, he still can't get rid of his fear of heights. With the departure of several people, the land of Huangsha returned to calm all at once. 20 minutes after the three of them left, a convoy of black SUVs arrived. With the sound of tires braking, a group of uniformed agents rushed out of the car. One of the men in a white shirt took off his sunglasses, looked at the devastated land. His eyes flickered, and he waved his hand. Dozens of agents behind him took tools and began to inspect the scene. And he took out a mobile phone from his pocket and dialed a number code named X. Sir, we have arrived. They have already left. They should have gone through a big battle. But it's over. The Phoenix girl has awakened. Looking at an agent holding an instrument, seeing the detected energy, eyes narrowed. 0 after a few seconds of silence, he said seriously. Preliminary calculations show that she has at least reached the alpha level, and may be the most mysterious and powerful Omega. I suggest canceling the plan for X Academy. Okay, I see. After hanging up the communication, the man narrowed his eyes slightly and murmured, Alpha, Omega, what a pity. Time passed slowly, and everything seemed so peaceful, but many people didn't know that some major events had happened during this seemingly peaceful time. Among them is the Xavier Teen Mutant Academy, and a huge crisis has quietly dissipated. Some smart people have also discovered that the original public opinion against mutants has undergone some changes. The voices of major media in various countries that have been promoting the danger of mutants suddenly stopped one day. And the biggest reason is that mutants gave birth to a new alpha level, and it may even be the existence of Omega level. That is what the countries call the Phoenix Girl, Great Sheen. After the fall of Professor X and Magneto, the major forces have targeted Academy X openly and secretly, and even arrested mutants all over the world, especially the former. When Cyclops and Wolverine left, it directly triggered a battle. The first order is to pull hips, but the update still needs to be updated, and the goal is still 10. And Chapter 67. Reversing the Future, February 10th, one night. A huge armed force blatantly attacked the X Academy. Even dispatched a few Apaches, tanks, armed vehicles, you name it. X Academy, the X-Men headed by Mystique and Storm fought hard to resist, but mutants are still weak in the highest-tech armed forces of mankind. The battle lasted for 2 hours, and there were many fraternities the mutant died on the spot. However, in the end, it was still unable to resist the attack of the armed forces, just when the Academy was about to be breached. The Phoenix is coming. The powerful Phoenix girl descended from the sky with Cyclops Scott and Wolverine Logan. She floated in the sky, and with the powerful power of the Phoenix, she instantly fixed all the soldiers who came. Especially when Phoenix saw the corpses of the fraternity mutants, 680 in the Academy, even though the fraternity and X Academy were hostile to each other at the beginning. But now, the other party sacrificed for those children. How could she not be sad anger? The enraged Phoenix Lady displays strength comparable to that of a god. The mighty power of the Phoenix swept in all directions, annihilating all the vehicles of the armed forces, several Apaches, armed tanks, armed vehicles, and other advanced technological weapons into dust. All the soldiers who stepped into the Academy were burned to ashes on the spot. This power, like a divine mansion, directly dispelled all the targets. The major forces canceled all plans tacitly, and even the public opinion was directly changed. They don't want such a guy to come to their door. After all, Gretchen's previous information is not confidential. Basically, all major forces know that one of her abilities is the same spiritual power as Professor X, which can read people's memories. If the angry Phoenix girl really wants to take revenge, even the president will definitely not be able to resist such a strong man once she finds out who she is. The way human beings live is self-knowledge. People who should not be provoked will definitely not be hot. If it is not considered that this Phoenix girl may still be angry, someone may have come to the door to plead guilty. As a result, the crisis of mutants has been completely resolved. Of course, the arrests of mutants all over the world are still going on secretly, but they will not be targeted openly. Even so, the Academy mutants breathed a sigh of relief. This one afternoon, Mystique Riven faded her blue skin and stood in the square with Scott, Logan, and Saber-Toothed Tiger, listening to the voice of the Storm Girl teaching in the Academy building and looking at the square structure, repairing the devastated Academy. Some other fraternity members helped carry things, and the atmosphere seemed harmonious. Ruewen looked a little crazy for a while. In the past, this was simply impossible, and every time they met, it was bound to be a big battle. If Charles and Eric were still alive, I don't know what they would think. Charles should be very happy. As for that old Magneto guy, who knows what he will think? Logan held a cigar in his mouth, with one hand in his trouser pocket, looking cool. However, after getting to know each other for a long time, everyone knows that the current Logan is completely different from the previous Logan who was cold outside and hot inside. The future Logan appears to be very mature. He used to be impatient with children and would hug a little one when he was fine. Not being gentle. Everyone looks so cool. Especially the old rival Scott, who is the most uncomfortable. Of course, apart from being a little sad about the death of Professor X, he is still happy to see such a situation. After all, a good mood can turn into a bad mood when I see a who is always against me every day. Scott looked at Sheen's back with gentle eyes and said softly, "The professor's wish all along is peace, so that everyone can live in peace and harmony. I believe that if he knows, he will die in peace. I remember that the professor has always hoped that you can lead the X-Men, and now it seems that this position will be taken away by Sheen." Logan squinted, trying to pierce his heart. However, after Scott understood the lip language, he looked indifferent. "I believe she will take over the professor's position. Isn't she very good?" "Hey, you bastard!" Logan rolled his eyes. After going through so much, Scott has indeed matured a lot, and he sees many things very openly. He looks unhappy on the surface, but he is still relatively happy in his heart. The saber-toothed tiger standing beside Logan elbowed his younger brother's waist and said in a low voice, "Watching the woman you like fall into someone else's arms, how can you bear it?" "I realized that I underestimated you, Logan." Logan didn't bother to go home. This unscrupulous old man, if he couldn't kill him, he would have torn them to pieces with his steel claws. Whether it is now or in the future, He will always be so annoying. Logan slightly raised his head and looked at the bright blue sky. His purpose of returning from the future to the present is to be able to rewrite history. Although the result was not perfect, he was satisfied enough. It's time for him to leave. Although he misses this place, he doesn't belong to this world after all. Scott caught a glimpse of Logan's expression, was slightly taken aback, seemed to think of something, reached out and patted his shoulder, and said with a smile, "Do you mind having a drink? I believe many people will be grateful for everything you have done for us." "Humph. I'll let you go home vomiting today." Logan's expression immediately changed into a rebellious one. Haha, who is afraid of whom? For a moment, there was laughter and laughter in the college, and the picture stretched out. The branches and leaves of the huge tree planted by Professor X trembled with the majesty, and a few leaves fluttered down. 20 years later, Logan suddenly opened his eyes, and what caught his eyes was the familiar yet unfamiliar ceiling of 5.0. He rubbed his head, lifted the quilt, and looked at the pajamas he was wearing with the Q version of the White Wolf printed on him. He sat up and got off the bed, walked to the bright window, opened the curtains, opened the window, and the dazzling and warm sunlight when it came in. He closed one eye, squinted one eye, and covered his face with his hand. After getting used to the light, he looked out of the window, and the name of the bird and the laughter of the students intertwined in his ears. Familiar vegetation, roads, trees, lakes, and many students sitting on the grass, playing and playing with each other, and young lovers sitting on the benches by the lake kissing me. But a familiar figure came over. His little face turned pale with fright, and he quickly let go of his unserious hand. Chapter 68. Second coming to Asgard, March 10th, familiar with small suits and white hair. He taught the two well-behaved and trembling young couples in front of him seriously. The corners of Logan's mouth curved slightly as he watched. He came back. Today, 20 years later, the college still exists, and there are many students he doesn't know. Looking at the number of students below, it is much more than 20 years ago. He literally reversed the future. Logan, who was in a good mood, picked up a half-drunk bottle of whiskey and a cigar from the table in the room, walked to the balcony, sat on a chair and smoked a cigar while drinking, feeling the warm sunshine, listening to the students are noisy, the sound of laughter. Everything is so beautiful. He likes this era. He is no longer the wolf who walks alone, but a wolf who integrates into this big family to protect. After half an hour, he changed into his clothes and straightened his hair in front of the mirror. He opened the door and walked downstairs, met many students along the way, greeted these children with a smile, and came to the professor's office along the way. Hearing a familiar voice from the other side of door 16, Logan slowed down a few steps as if struck by lightning. He couldn't believe his ears, and his heart seemed to be overwhelmed. With that excited and unbelievable emotion, he slowly stretched out a slightly trembling hand and knocked on the door. Boom, boom, boom. "Come in." The old and peaceful voice made Logan twist the doorknob and push the door open. When he saw the picture in the office, his pupils suddenly shrank and he froze in place. What did he see? Professor X, who was supposed to die, was sitting in a wheelchair, and a group of people were either standing or sitting around him. Not only that, but what shocked him even more was that one of them was actually wearing the saint cloth that belonged to a Saint Seiya. What was the golden saint cloth? The gorgeous, noble, and sacred golden holy garment was worn on her slender body, making her look extraordinarily dazzling, making her as bright as if she had absorbed all the light. Has wine-red hair. As if aware of Logan's gaze, she turned her back to his figure, revealing Chin's face. Compared with Chin 20 years ago, Chin now has a more melodious and noble temperament, and her face, skin, and skin are already beautiful enough. Become more delicate and smooth. There is a look of calmness in the eyes, and the two pianos are completely different. Water. Logan finally couldn't hold back the shock in his heart and cried out aloud. How so? Isn't Charles dead? Smiley face. Why is Chin wearing a golden holy garment? Became a gold saint? What is it with him? He reversed the future, and the future changed like this? What is this all about? What's wrong with you, Logan? Could it be that you drank too much yesterday? The old love rival Scott standing beside Chin was wearing a brown plaid shirt. For some reason, he took off his red quartz glasses and put on transparent glasses with golden frames. With some stubble on his chin, his temperament is mature, and he looks a little gentle. Charles, Jean, you? Because Logan was too shocked, his speech seemed a little broken. Charles was wearing a suit and sitting in a wheelchair. Looking at Logan with a strange expression, he couldn't help but ask, Logan, what's wrong with you? Is there any change between me and Qin that surprises you? Qin Wanwan's slender eyebrows slightly tightened, her eyes fixed on Logan, and a powerful spiritual force instantly penetrated Logan's soul. When she read Logan's past memories, she immediately realized everything. So that's it, Logan. Welcome back. It seems that you have experienced a lot. The corner of Qin's mouth hooked slightly, with a slanted head and a playful look. Logan's return to the future didn't attract much attention. This is the established history, and Logan thinks he has reversed the future, but he didn't know at all that this was originally part of the history of destiny. In the future, when he knows this, he will be even more shocked. Of course, even if Logan knows, he may not care about fate or anything like that. After so much, he cares more about the present. Of course, this is all for later. Asgard. On this day, Odin, the Lord of Asgard and King of the Gods, was wearing armor and holding Gungnir, the Spear of Eternity. He led the army of Asgard to stand in front of the square. The future king of Asgard, Thor and the evil Loki. After that, there are the three warriors of Asgard, Sif and others, and the gods of the Asa clan. Everyone is waiting silently. It is conceivable that the person who can make the whole of Asgard wait with such the highest attitude, and the person who waits has a noble status. Even Sol, who is usually the most aggressive and active, stood obediently by Odin's side. The reason is not that he thinks the other party is strong or noble, but because Odin told him before that he caused some trouble when he led the army in the rebellion of the Nine Realms, and he didn't want to cause trouble. Otherwise, the father god Odin would be angered, and the consequences would definitely not be what he wanted to see. Asgard warriors wore scale armor weapons and lined up neatly in square formations, full of silence. The color of bravery 680 is unobstructed. After waiting for a long time, Odin's one eye flickered slightly. Here we come, boom! Just ahead, a golden beam of light fell out of thin air from the distant sky and hit the square in front of Odin heavily in the blink of an eye. The golden ripples spread, and in the next second, the golden light of the beam of light dissipated slowly, and several figures walked out of it. Wrapped in a familiar white veil, wearing a golden laurel crown and holding a golden victory scepter, with a beautiful face and noble temperament, when she appeared, everyone in the entire square fell in love with her, especially Sol, whose eyes even more suddenly stared wide. Wow, she's so beautiful, Sol couldn't help murmuring in a low voice, and Frigga, who was on Odin's left, couldn't help but turn her head and stare. Loki next to Sol was also moved by the goddess's beautiful face. Of course, what attracted him the most were the boys and girls in golden armor behind the goddess. It's just that the group of teenagers and girls focused their eyes on Sol, showing displeasure, obviously hearing Sol's words. Sol, I think you may be in trouble. Chapter 69. Sol's Challenge, 4 out of 10. Odin took the lead to take a few steps forward, met the goddess in front of him, put his right fist on his chest, and said with an equal gift, Athena, you are welcome. Asgard is honored. It was Athena and the saints under her command who came. Following Odin's etiquette, Sol and others behind him also saluted together, except Sol, Loki, and Frigga. Most of them bent down to show their respect. Your Majesty Odin, please be polite. Athena, that is Kyle, also returned the same level of courtesy. Odin introduced his wife behind him. This is my wife Frigga. Kyle looked at Frigga. Queen Frigga, welcome, Athena. After some politeness, Kyle glanced at the Asgard soldiers lined up neatly and orderly behind Odin, as well as Thor and the others, and his eyes stayed on the two brothers Sol and Loki for a second. He exclaimed in admiration. It's no wonder that he is the heir of Odin, with amazing talent, and he will definitely become an excellent king in the future. It is worth mentioning that the king in the discourse did not specify who he was talking about. As for the Asa Protoss, she did not mention that most of these Protoss are not weak, and there are a few who are not weaker than Sol, but the road has come to an end and there is no more room for growth. In terms of potential, it is not as good as Sol, and Kyle naturally looks down on him at all. Haha, Sol and Loki are still immature. They need more time to become a qualified king. Odin smiled brightly, then looked at the saints behind Kyle. His eyes flickered with shock. Compared to these children, Sol and Loki are much worse. As an existence like the ceiling of the Heavenly Father, why can't Odin see the majestic energy and the huge aura in the bodies of the boys and girls in front of him, each of which is much stronger than Sol, let alone Loki carry? If Sol still has the power to fight, then Loki is purely crushed. The magic that Loki is best at has no effect on the eyes of the saints who can directly see through the essence, and the powerful body that is immune to magic. Unexpectedly, during this period of deep sleep, this goddess of extraordinary origin has cultivated such a group of terrifying warriors, which made Odin's inner evaluation of Athena soar several levels again. The whole Asgard Odin thinks the best is Thor. It's just that Sol has been growing up for thousands of years, but he was chased and surpassed by the original group of mortals. How incredible it is! However, Odin's words were heard by Sol and Loki behind him, and they were quite dissatisfied in their hearts. Loki was able to hide his thoughts, and there was no change on the surface, but Thor's unconvinced expression was directly on his face. Staring at a pair of tiger eyes, the undisguised fighting spirit made him want to fight these boys and girls on the spot. See who is the best fighter. It's just that he didn't see an invisible arc curved at the corner of Odin's mouth facing away from him. Odin, who was about to watch his son being run away, stretched out his hand eagerly on the surface. I have prepared a banquet. Come and taste the food and wine of Asgard. Thank you. Afterwards, Odin and Kyle stood side by side, with Frigga half a step behind, followed by the saints and Sol Loki, and the group walked towards the palace dedicated to entertaining distinguished guests. Asgard's construction style is somewhat similar to that of ancient Rome. The rough style, the majestic atmosphere, and the almost luxurious resplendent, combining the two unique points, it is Asgard, the realm of the gods. Just like the real kingdom of God, the palace for banquets also follows this style. The space is wide enough to accommodate tens of thousands of people. Stone pillars are erected around the four sides. The open-air palace, except for the lowest floor in the middle, is extended backwards with stone seats, which is somewhat similar to the structure of the Colosseum in ancient Rome. There are many seats in the middle. Odin, Kyle, and Queen Frigg sit on the main seat, while Bart and a group of saints sit on another seat with Sol, the three warriors of rocky Asgard and others. The others are the gods such as the Ace of Protos. There is not much politeness at the banquet, just chatting between eating and drinking. It's just that there are some small episodes in it, such as some interesting words in Sol's seat. Sol and Loki are sitting side by side, looking at the teenagers and girls who are eating barbecue and other delicacies on the opposite side. Their eyes are full of heat. He raised a large exaggerated wine glass, stood up and smiled boldly at Bart and the others. Hey, guys, I heard that you are the most powerful warrior under the command of the goddess Athena. My name is Sol Odinson, and he is my brother, Loki. I am the strongest warrior in Asgard, and I challenge you in the name of Thor. As soon as these words came out, the noisy banquet hall immediately became quiet. All the Ace of Protos present, and even some high-ranking Legion commanders, all focused their eyes on Sol's seat, their faces full of excitement. Asgard has always been martial, and it can be said that he is full of martial arts, and he will challenge him from time to time, which is normal for Asgard. This can be regarded as adding color to the banquet. In particular, everyone is very interested in the group of young warriors under the command of a goddess of the same level as Odin. For a while, noisy voices broke the calm. Hoo-ha, fight, fight, fight. Haha, I like fighting. The battle between Sol and Saint Seiya must be very interesting. Wang Qian's, Sol, you must win. You are the of thunder. All the soldiers stood up and raised their wine glasses, their blood spurting. Odin, Kyle and Frigga, who were communicating on the exclusive throne seat, also attracted attention. Seeing the hilarious and passionate atmosphere, Odin smiled and looked at Athena. I'm sorry, Athena. It's Sol, it's too presumptuous. It's okay. I like the atmosphere of Asgard very much. Kai don't mind. From the beginning when Odin praised Bart and the others, she could see Odin's plan. This kind of small design cannot be called a calculation, and from Odin's perspective, she couldn't see which of Bart and the others did not need sulkying. Obviously, he just wanted to rectify Sol, who was not yet mature enough. Chapter 70. Athena's Blessing, 5 out of 10, and Odin has another deep meaning. Through this battle, the connection between the two parties can become more harmonious. During the conversation between the two, in Sol's seat, Bart and the others looked at Sol, who was holding a wine glass full of fighting spirit, and looked at each other. They didn't expect such a good thing to happen. In the Earth Sanctuary before, everyone was tortured by the Pope, which was called miserable. Originally, I just thought that I would follow the goddess Athena to Asgard to enjoy the delicious food here, but it turned out to be a surprise. Don't force me, I will come first. Stop talking nonsense. I was beaten up so badly by the Pope yesterday. Let me vent my anger today. Stop talking. Look at the appearance of this blonde uncle, a tough guy. Of course I, who is also a tough guy, will have a fist-to-blood fight with him. Hey, What about ladies first? What the hell, Tina? When did you learn women's rights? Isn't everyone equal? Why should there be any priority? Although they didn't speak, Bart and a group of saints communicated with each other with their spiritual power, and the content was naturally about fighting for the fight to beat Soul in a fair way 680. Even the lively Tina and the cold Ella couldn't help but get involved. Only Sanzabu was completely indifferent and ate with chopsticks with his eyes closed. This melodious and peaceful gesture was looked at by Sif curiously and then completely ignored. Asgard prefers people with a flamboyant and straightforward personality. Sanzabu is not within this scope. On the contrary, Loki, who had been silent from the beginning, sized up Sanzabu several times, becoming the evil god, the of deceit. Loki's perception ability is not weak, and his observation ability and eyesight are also outstanding. He felt that all saints were extremely dangerous, and every breath was more terrifying than Soul. But after observing, he thinks that the handsome and peaceful young man Sanzabu is even more frightening and bottomless. In particular, he had a deep feeling that if this young man opened his eyes, he would burst out with unimaginable terrifying energy. Loki really wanted to see the young man's appearance after he opened his eyes, and wanted to make a little trick, but he glanced at the beautiful goddess and Odin on the main seat in the distance, and decided to give up. He thinks that he must be the most intelligent person, but it doesn't mean that he can confidently show his cleverness in front of Odin and the goddess Athena of the same level. Forget it, it is also a happy thing to see Soul make an embarrassment today. When Loki was in a good mood, Bart and the others quarreled with no results, and finally decided to let Soul choose. Obviously, the boys and girls are also a group of villains. Let Soul personally choose to blast his own people. Bart was smart, stood up first, looked at Soul and said, "My name is Bart. Soul, who do you want to challenge?" Smiley face. However, with those fiery eyes and expectant expression, it was obvious that he hoped that Soul would choose him. This made the others feel so unhappy that they wanted to beat Bart violently together. This boy with thick eyebrows and big eyes was so narrow-minded. It was simply unforgivable. Tina also had an angry expression, which was quite cute. Just as Bart thought, Soul saw that although Bart was young, his body had initially grown up. The human race gave Bart a burly body, and the wide body was even a little bigger than the already strong Soul. The size advantage made Soul decide to be this little brother. "Good man, my friend. You must be a tough guy by the looks of you, and you are the only one. Okay, I believe this will be a feast," Bart grinned. Roar, roar, roar. Accompanied by the determined challenge, all the Asgardian warriors present beat their chests one after another, and the table was full of majestic and rough roars. The warm atmosphere became more manic. At the same time, Kyle, Odin, and Frigga stood up. Odin spoke, and the deep and old voice was transmitted to everyone's ears. "People of Asgard, this battle will surely be recorded in history, and it will represent the friendship between Sanctuary and Asgard. Therefore, in the name of the Odinson family, I announce that today, who will win this battle, I can let the winner choose a spoil from the treasury." Roar with Odin's words all the more eager. The loot, the battle, is the eternal romance of a warrior. Odin is generous, and Kyle will not be stingy, and his red lips are slightly parted. "I declare in the name of Athena that the victor will receive a shield made by me, and the unyielding warrior will be blessed by me." The ethereal voice washed everyone's hearts like a clear spring, but this didn't extinguish the fire in everyone's heart, as if fueling the flames. Both winners and losers will be rewarded. The shield forged by the goddess herself, and the blessing of the goddess. Everyone knows that the blessing of the goddess is not just a verbal blessing, but the blessing of a god's mansion, which contains the highest divine power in the universe, will be inferior and victorious. Boom. A flash of lightning flashed across the sky. Soul's eyes flashed with boundless lightning, and he looked at Bart's eyes together, and the two surging fighting spirits collided, and the confrontation had already begun before the battle started. As for eating, it's not too late to eat after beating. Asgard Dueling Arena. This is a huge building capable of accommodating hundreds of thousands of people, and the wide duel venue is surrounded by step seats. It has already been known that Soul will duel with the saints under the command of Athena. Immediately attracted the attention of countless Asgardians. In a short time, the seats in the entire duel arena were already filled. Accompanied by the loud and noisy voices, on the towering rooftop in front, Odin, Kyle, and Frigga sat on the throne, with Loki, the Aesir and other saints standing on both sides. From this angle, you can see the battlefield below. Boom, boom, boom. Amidst the noisy sound, Odin tapped the Gungnir lightly on the ground with his hand, and the crisp sound resounded throughout the arena. Without too much nonsense, Odin just said 4 words. The battle begins, boom. Chapter 71. The invincible Taurus in the eyes of everyone excited and eager. I saw 2 figures descending from the sky, falling heavily on the wide duel field. The 2 are obviously the protagonists of this duel, Taurus St. Bart and Thor. Both were tall and well-built, and Thor was wearing an Asgardian dress. He wears a red cloak, holds Thor's hammer, and wears a helmet, majestic and majestic. The whole body is wrapped in strands of electric light, like of thunder. As for Bart, the gorgeous and noble golden holy garment was draped on his body. His sturdy body fit perfectly with the majestic holy garment. The gorgeous and streamlined armor, the raised shoulder armor, the leg armor had sharp spikes on the knees, and the helmet was like a golden bull. His horn seems to pierce the sky, and he wears a white jade cloak on his back and dances with the strong wind. Surrounded by wisps of golden airflow, he wears a golden helmet. From the shape alone, it is already full of visual impact. Muscular, burly, and armor are the true romance of warriors, making countless people and warriors of Asgard excited. Huge cheers rang through the entire duel arena. Solo Dinson, a loud and elongated voice resounded through the air, causing countless Asgardian warriors to cheer and shout along with them. Soul, 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 soul. This is Thor, their invincible Asgard of thunder, and the future king that everyone in Asgard expects to trust. Bart Batu. In the warm atmosphere, the sonorous voice resounded again. Asgard will not be stingy with his admiration and applause when facing outsiders. Although the battle has not yet begun, Bart's turbulent and domineering momentum has already conquered them. Bart, 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 Bart. In the sound wave that was about to break through the sky, the overall excitement and warm atmosphere of the duel field had climbed to the extreme. In the turbulent atmosphere, Sol, the protagonist, could no longer hold back the monstrous fighting spirit in his heart. He stretched out his hammer and aimed at Bart, who was in front of him with his arms folded, and grinned loudly. Son of Bart, let us enjoy today's battle. This duel. Click. The thunder exploded, and the pupils of the eyes flickered with infinite lightning while speaking. Come on. Facing the soaring Thor, Bart's eyes lit up with emerald green light. Boom. As Bart's voice fell, Sol stopped talking nonsense and stepped forward with his right foot. His legs were like igniting a fire oil barrel, igniting a terrible explosive force, and as the air wave burst, Sol's whole body rushed instantly to Bart. Seeing this, the latter was not to be outdone, flung his cloak violently, stepped forward as well, turned into a light beam, and rushed towards Sol with a domineering, imposing manner. The distance of a kilometer is nothing more than a blink of an eye for the 2 of them. In the eyes of hundreds of thousands of eager eyes, Thor and the golden and emerald Bart collided together. Thor swung Thor's hammer and slammed forward, while Bart clenched his right hand with the golden glove tightly and punched. The hammer collided with the golden glove in an instant. Boom! At this moment, time seemed to stop for a moment, and in the next second, with the hammer fist as the center, a terrifyingly huge shock wave swept away in all directions in an instant, and the shocking explosion sounded like a thunderclap, making everyone's eardrums seem to be shattered, generally cracked. Rumble. The entire duel field was shaken violently, and the air waves rolled back in all directions with the smoke and dust, completely engulfing the figures of Bart and Sol. And in the smoke, terrifying electric lights intertwined with emerald green air currents and flickered. The momentary collision was like a spark hitting the earth, bursting out a devastating shock wave like a natural disaster. This time, all the people in the duel arena were beaten into silence. Everyone has forgotten the shouting and cheering. Everyone, regardless of men, women, or children, is concerned about the situation of this battle. After all, it is not uncommon for strong men of this level to confront each other, even in the past dynasties of Asgard. Who will win? Who will lose? No one knows, but it is such a completely unpredictable battle that makes people excited and excited. Rumble. The terrifying impact turned into ripples that blurred the air. The dust and smoke filled the sky, making it impossible to see the situation inside. Everyone stared at the 2 looming figures in the smoke. Finally, a terrible gust of wind suddenly burst out inside. The strong wind blew away the smoke and dust in an instant, and before people could react, they saw one of the figures shooting backwards like a cannonball in the distance. Take a closer look. It was actually Sol, and Thor shot backwards, flying tens of thousands of meters, and then hit the ground heavily, smashing the ground into a big, deep hole. Even the Thor's hammer in his hand fly in the distance. Everyone in Asgard couldn't believe their eyes. Sol was about to lose like this? The answer is of course no. Sol was lying in the deep pit, and it took only a second for him to recover. However, before he stood up, his pupils shrank suddenly, and his super-strong senses were giving an early warning. Intensely dangerous. The hairs all over his body were about to stand on end. Thor yelled angrily without hesitation, and the divine power in his body was completely released. Surging thunder and lightning spewed out of his body, and he stretched out his right hand, aiming at the direction of Thor's hammer in the distance, accompanied by the flashing lights of each hammer. As if attractive, Sol's figure just lay there gliding towards Thor's hammer. At the moment of sliding, I saw a golden figure falling down like a meteorite above the area where Sol was lying. Boom! With the energy of destroying the world, it was smashed heavily, and in an instant, the ground shook and the mountains shook, and the endless cracks spread wantonly like spider webs, densely packed, and the terrible impact airflow drove gravel and dust. Obviously, if Sol is a step slower, he will suffer a heavy blow. Fortunately, Thor's strong fighting awareness allowed Sol to dodge the blow, but he had already fallen below the rhythm. Ordinary people and fighters in Asgard may not have noticed this, but the rest of the saints on the subjective battle stage, Loki, Sif, and even the gods of the Asgard clan have seen it. Loki's eyes flashed solemnly, but he didn't make a sound. Tyr, who is missing an arm and is the most powerful god of war, slowly said, "Sol, there is trouble. He is still too careless. His fighting rhythm has been mastered by Bart." The follow-up words are not finished, but the gods are very clear that Sol will definitely meet the turbulent attack of the Taurus Saint Seiya next. Facing such an opponent of the same level, or even stronger, the rhythm of the battle has already determined the outcome. It is indeed the strongest golden saint under the command of the goddess Athena. Whether it is strength, speed, or combat awareness, it is incredible. If Sol wants to regain the rhythm, it will be difficult. Glancing briefly at Kyle on the throne, he shook his head, his tone full of dignity. The rest of the gods also nodded in agreement. There was also a storm in my heart. Although they already knew the strength of the saints, they still underestimated them. The two confrontations alone have basically established the direction of the situation. However, such an opponent feels worthy of a challenge. The gods looked at each other, their eyes flashing with fire. The gods could see it clearly, and Sol in the duel field also understood that now he had completely put himself into the role of fighting, and he knew that the opponent he was facing was the most terrifying existence in his life. The next thing he has to do is to regain the rhythm. However, Bart will not give Sol a chance. Boom! The golden figure broke through the dust and smoke, mixed with boundless turbulent and violent aura, and pointed directly at Sol, who was gliding close to the ground, with a terrifying speed that did not match his body shape at all, and it was jaw-dropping. Bart's figure came first and rushed to the front of Sol. The golden light shattered, Bart's body turned, his right leg went from top to bottom, mixed with a huge force of hundreds of thousands of tons, aimed at Sol Air's body fell heavily. Boom! Terrible force rubbed against the air, and even rubbed out terrible sparks. Sol's pupils reflected the golden boots that were getting closer and closer. Just in time, he summoned Thor's hammer back, and before he could think about it, he directly held the hammer high in front of him. Rumble! The duel field shook violently again. The turbulent air waves raged, and a large pit with a diameter of a kilometer was smashed out of the ground. The dense cracks around it spread like spider webs, and Sol didn't have the current leg at all. Stepping on Thor's hammer hit Thor's chest. The breastplate is dented. Puff! Sol was smashed into a pit a few meters deep, and he spurted out a mouthful of blood. If Sol didn't have the body of the Asgardian gods and the divine power to protect him, or just this one, it would be enough for Sol to lose his life directly. Fighting power. But even so, Sol suffered a lot of injuries. But it wasn't over yet. A big hand pierced through the smoke and dust and the splashing rain of gravel, precisely grabbed Sol's neck and grabbed him alive. Smiley face. Sol sensed that something was wrong, but he also keenly grasped a flaw. Thor's hammer struck directly and hit Bart's stomach armor. However, the hasty blow did not exert its full power at all, and Bart completely ignored this. With the golden visor under the helmet, he couldn't see his expression clearly, but the ferocious look in his eyes was extremely conspicuous. Just grabbing Sol's neck like this, he slammed at the ground. Boom! Thor had no power to fight back at all. Blood spilled again. Sol was like a marionette. He was smashed and then caught again. Bart slammed it like a shot put. Thor's body roared and shot towards the edge, and finally hit the wall on the edge of the duel arena. Boom! The huge force knocked the wall to pieces. Pieces of rubble buried Sol in it, and the dust and smoke slowly spread. This entered into a crushing duel, making the entire duel field silent. Everyone stared blankly at this scene. They glanced at the ruins of the collapsed wall where Sol was buried, and then looked at the domineering and majestic Bart standing on the field. In the next second, a huge sound wave immediately resounded through the entire world. Bart, 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 Bart. It's too strong, Bart, it's too strong. Odin is on top. Is this the golden saint under the command of the goddess Athena? It's unbelievable that he beat Thor so hard that he couldn't fight back. This is the strong, this is fighting, this is power, and power is eternal. Sol has met his opponent, huh? Unrivaled strength, and a speed that doesn't match his figure. This is simply the most perfect fighter. 3,500 words per chapter, big chapter, and Chapter 72. The power of Odin. The people who were sitting and watching the battle in the duel field immediately stood up with blushing faces, shouting excitedly, applauding, and whistling. The clamor was almost manic. No matter men, women, young, or old. Everyone looked at Bart with fanaticism and obsession in their eyes. Obviously, the less than a minute of the battle just now had completely conquered them, and their blood was already boiling. Above Odin, I've never seen Sol like this. Volstagg, one of the 3 warriors of Asgard on the subjective stage, opened his mouth wide. This fat warrior has followed Sol for thousands of years, and he knows how strong Sol is as he fights east and west. It can be said that whether against powerful opponents, flame giants, or armies from other worlds, Thor is like a who dominates life, holding Thor's hammer, controlling thunder, and destroying all opponents. He is like the King Odin in his youth, symbolizes victory. Today, however, Bart made him break this inherent concept. Sometimes Sol will be embarrassed when facing some powerful opponents, but he will be the winner in the end. But this time, even the loyal Volstagg is not sure Thor can really win. Beside him, Fandral, who is also one of the 3 warriors of Asgard, can still maintain his so-called elegance, stroked his neatly trimmed short beard, and shook his head. It's too strong. Bart is definitely Thor, 680, the strongest opponent I've ever had in my life. Strength and speed are not comparable to Sol at all, and even the fighting consciousness seems to be stronger than Thor, who has experienced many battles. It is too unbelievable. Yes, generally speaking, such a strong man is already the strongest existence in the 9 realms except for Odin. He should be written into the history of the 9 realms, worshipped and admired by countless people. Another warrior. Hogun's eyes moved. He felt that he was going to be conquered by that boy. It was an all-round conquest. Not only him, but others as well. Asgard worships real warriors and strong men. In battle, Sol is hardened from punch to flesh. Such a tough fighting style directly hits the hearts and souls of the Asgardians. For the Asgardians, this kind of fighting is what the strong should have. Any conspiracies and tricks in the battle will be cast aside. Even if they win, they will not be convincing, and they will even be permanently nailed to the pillar of shame by the Asgardians. Sif glanced at the 3 of them, then looked at the majestic and mighty Bart standing on the field below, and touched his cheek. I feel like I'm going to be conquered by this boy. Sif, you are thousands of years older than him. Volstagg stroked his messy curly beard and reminded him. For our almost eternal life, thousands of years is not a problem at all. Sif didn't care at all. Volstagg was helpless and didn't know what to say. Indeed, as Sif said, for the long-lived race, the age gap is not a problem at all, which is completely different from ordinary people. It's just that he didn't expect that Sif would have the idea of empathizing with someone else. After all, the 3 warriors all know that Sif has always liked Sol, but Sol himself is as ignorant as a fool, and even willing to show mercy everywhere in the 9 realms. The 3 warriors looked at each other and did not express their views on this. Anyway, Sol doesn't seem to have any idea about Sif, and the 2 are not husband and wife, so it's normal for Sif to empathize with each other. While communicating here, Loki on the side didn't care about the conversations of his partners at all. He was completely immersed in the pleasure of his stupid brother being run away, and he could see that arrogant and stupid Sol being hammered randomly. Is there anything happier than this kind of thing? Not at all. What kind of love is love? That's a fart. Uncle Rocky just likes it. Loki, who was in a happy mood, was already secretly poking at the picture of Thor being defeated like a dejected rooster. and the happy Loki almost didn't laugh out loud. Well, when you get back to the banquet, you must have a few drinks in the early morning and comfort your stupid brother. But when Loki was still fantasizing, there was another movement from the duel field. Click. In the ruins of the collapsed wall, a strong arm suddenly pierced through the broken stone. In the next second, Sol directly lifted the broken stone buried on his body and stood up. Although he was hit hard several times, he this time is also fully restored. Flicking his long blonde hair and throwing the debris away, Sol twisted his neck and looked at Bart, who was not chasing after the victory. "You are a worthy opponent, Bart. Let's keep fighting." The loud voice reached Bart's ears. This kind of respect is not only because of Bart's strength, but also because of Bart's character. It obviously means that he didn't take advantage of the victory just now, but waited for Sol to recover. Bart nodded and stretched out his hand to signal the continuation of the battle. Sol grinned. The divine power in his body boiled like molten lava. His expression immediately became serious. His eyes burst with lightning, and he, who had the power of thunder, directly affected the sky. I saw the dark clouds gathering in the sky, and the terrible rolling thunder flickered out of thin air in the thick clouds. Bart looked up, his eyes moved slightly. Boom! A thick bolt of lightning slashed down from the thick clouds, but unexpectedly, it didn't slash at Bart, but summoned Thor, who was thundering. Sol didn't struggle to resist and let the thunderbolt strike. Bathed in the electric light, powerful thunder shuttled into the body. At the same time, Thor's turbulent and violent momentum was soaring and climbing at a terrifying speed. The surrounding area is surrounded by endless electric light, intertwined calls, and the leaked violent lightning has scorched the surrounding ground with electricity, and the air has already begun to distort and blur. Bathed in thunder, the crimson cloak and golden hair stood upright behind him, and the surrounding gravel was affected and floated uncontrollably. Just like Sol's title, at this moment, he is the real Thor. The face under Bart's mask also became serious. Although this battle is just for him to vent, it does not mean that he will underestimate his opponent. As a golden saint of Taurus, he has his own pride in his heart. He can be trained by the Pope in the sanctuary to be beaten into a dead dog, but on the outside, he is a saint, representing Athena. He absolutely does not allow himself to be defeated by another opponent in front of Athena. Boom! Bart, who became serious, instantly ignited the small universe, and a golden halo appeared on the surface of the golden armor of the holy clothes, which ignited like a flame. The monstrous breath raged in all directions like mountains and seas. The ground under his feet shook wildly, and strands of air currents blew away. The ground could not bear this level of coercion and cracked. The two surging auras collided and intertwined with each other, splitting the world in front of them into two halves. One half shone with emerald green and golden light, and the other was raging like lightning in daytime. The aura of collision and raging permeated the entire duel arena and weighed heavily on everyone's hearts. Even if the people of Asgard were super strong, most of them could not bear such a violent momentum. Their hearts seemed to be pinched. It's about to burst any time. Kyle and Odin on the viewing platform noticed this. Kyle's slender eyebrows moved slightly. When he was about to make a move, he sensed something and gave up. Sure enough, Odin was sitting on the throne with Gungnir, the spear of eternity, tapping the ground lightly. Boom! The crisp voice resounded in everyone's ears, and they saw lightning like air currents blowing over everyone in the auditorium of the duel field. With the blessing of Odin's power, the Asgardians who were uncomfortable and straightforward suddenly relaxed. Although I also intuitively and personally felt the horror of those two auras, but my body was no longer affected by it. This is the power of Odin? That's right. Kyle's beautiful eyes had a golden halo looming, and he was thoughtful. The power of Odin is the divine power inherited from the Odinson family. From the gestation of Odinbra, this divine power has different names in different people. In the era of Bor, it was called the power of Bor. In the era of Odin, it was called the power of Odin. As the son of Odin, if Thor inherited it, he would be called the power of Thor. The power of Odin is different from that of Bor. He can be so strong that he can even rival the single universe at the level of the Father of Heaven, and he can even fight against the gods at the peak. Even the one that was hammered was strong enough. This is also related to Odin's experience. Odin's father, Bor, has 3 sons, namely Odin, Willi, and Frey, who belong to the 3 brothers. As members of the Odinson family, all 3 have supernatural powers. The 3 brothers were once ordered to steal the eternal flame of the flame giant Surtur, but they were discovered by Surtur during the retreat. Before dying, pass all the power of the two to Odin. In the end, Odin defeated Surtur and captured the eternal flame. In other words, the power of Odin is combined with the power of Willi, the power of Fae, and the 3-in-1 power, which doubles the power of Odin. Therefore, Odin is called the strongest in the history of Asgard. Big God. The power of Odin is omnipotent, including energy emission, modifying reality, creating or resurrecting life, decomposing or repairing objects, improving physical fitness, traveling through timelines, opening dimensional channels, applying spells and blessings, reading thoughts, and remote brainwave communication, create force fields or shields, telekinesis, and more. It is the supreme power at the cosmic level in the true sense. It's just that Odin's power is too strong, and Odin's body that gradually weakens with age can no longer bear the increasing divine power, so the 5.0 week-long Odin sleep state is needed. It can be said that although Odin seems to be unable to shoot casually now, if Odin really wants to explode Odin's power desperately, the combat power will be unimaginable. This is why Thanos, the tyrant, knows that the space gem is on the Earth, but he just came to the Earth in person. Apart from Gu-E, who owns the time gem, there is also Odin. Thanos has been waiting for the fall of the Ancient One and Odin before implementing his own plan. After all, Thanos would not be stupid enough to tease an old Odin at will. He didn't want to be eaten alive by an angry Odin. As the inheritor of Athena's godhead, Kyle's vision has reached an unimaginable level. Almost instantly, the moment Odin uses the power of Odin, she has completely understood the power of Odin. But the power of Odin's some properties are the same as her divine power, but in real comparison, it is naturally not comparable to the divine power of a creation god. So she didn't care too much. I just lament the power of the Odinson family's inherited divine power. It's no wonder that Thor's future timeline can reach the strength of the rune Thor. Chapter 73. Conquering the Taurus of Asgard. When Kyle understood the power of Odin, Odin didn't know it. He was still looking at the situation below the viewing platform with a serious face. No one knew what he was thinking. Only Frigga, who was Odin's wife, saw through her husband's thoughts and shook his head helplessly. But Frigga did not interfere with her husband's actions. Not only Odin knew about his physical condition, but Frigga was also very clear about her husband's plan. Everything was for Asgard and for Sol to grow up as soon as possible. She could only look at her son with a trace of distress. I hope Thor won't be hit badly later. However, with Sol's personality, there is a high probability that he will only be more excited and even strive to become stronger. Smiley face. The dual field was constantly vibrating with the collision of two monstrous and violent auras, which stimulated the excitement of the people of Asgard even more. As the people of Asgard with a big heart, many parents still hold their children who are only a few years old, or even just born to observe and emulate, which is called nurturing, bathing, and fighting. Come on, Sol. Defeat Bart and protect the glory of Asgard. A strong and burly Asgardian civilian roared, while holding his 4 or 5-year-old son high. Around, the Asgardians who firmly supported Thor also roared to cheer for Thor. And not far away, a group of Asgardians who had just been conquered by Bart's domineering fighting style shouted loudly not to be outdone. Bart, defeat Sol. Let those idiots see how powerful the Saints are. Bart, the strongest fighter. The two voices intertwined, and the sound wave became louder and louder. The same two auras became more and more terrifying. Gradually, when they climbed to the limit, Thor held Thor's hammer in both hands, held it high in the sky, and swung it down fiercely in the next second. Boom! In an instant, the sky and the earth turned into daylight, and the terrifying howling thunderbolts poured down like a torrential rain. The entire dual field directly became an ocean of thunder, and the boundless dual field filled with thunder raged. The dense thunder began to distort. This horrible scene is as terrifying as the doomsday. Such a raging, terrifying force caused waves of roaring roars like a tsunami. Thor's staunch supporters believe that this is Thor, the invincible demeanor that Thor of Asgard should have. Such Thor is invincible and can defeat any enemy, even as strong as the Golden Bull and Gold Saint Bart. Even the gods of the Asa Protoss on the spectator stand and Loki, who wanted to see Thor get beaten violently, were surprised by Sol's strength. Especially Loki, he didn't expect Thor to be so powerful now. If it was him who attacked such a terrible attack, he probably wouldn't even run away. What the hell? This reckless man who only knows how to fight has grown to this point. It seems that I need to change my plan for Sol in the future. Loki's eyes flickered coldly. Compared with the gods of Asgard, the saints are calm and put their hands on their chests, or put their hands behind their backs. Soul's move is indeed powerful, and it can even be compared to some of their tactics. But it is a pity that everyone knows that such an attack has no effect on Bart. Elvis, in particular, shook his head and said bluntly, "Now even my Thunder Plasma Bart is familiar. Let alone such an attack, Soul will suffer a lot." Thunder Plasma can also be called Plasma Light Speed Fist, which is one of the strongest tactics of his Leo constellation. In essence, it completely releases the power of Light Speed Fist. The area is similar to Soul's move. Although he can't punch the speed of Light Punch, he can also punch a weakened version of the plasma speed of Sound Punch through the speed of Sound Punch. The power of both sides is hard to say. The destructive power of Thor's move Thunderbolt is not inferior to his tactics, but it is a pity that it is far inferior in speed and density. He and Bart often fight. Bart is so familiar with this move that he can't be familiar with it. How could it work? The other Saints obviously understand this point. They agreed. Hearing Elvis's words, the hearts of the gods on the viewing platform were shocked. Sure enough, just as Elvis said, Bart stood on the dueling field, feeling the terrifying power of the thunder that filled the sky. Not only had no intention of being afraid, but shook his head slightly. Boom! A thick bolt of lightning struck from the left, pointing directly at Bart. The latter did not turn his head but took a step back. The thick lightning flashed across the golden holy cloth, and a huge, deep hole was formed on the ground in the distance. Twisting his neck slightly, Bart's legs were slightly bent, one forward and one backward in a rushing posture, with his hands crossed in front of his chest, and his head with a helmet stood behind his hands, following his crossed hands, revealing his domineering Ling Ran stared at Soul, who was bathed in thunder ahead, and said softly, "Soul, I am called the Golden Bison by my partners, which means that I am as crazy and brave as a bison. For example, the gold saints of the golden bulls of all ages, when the Taurus steps on the ground, the power that bursts out will be feared by even the gods. In the end, the sound shook the sky like a big drum being struck, accompanied by a roar. Boom! The burning small universe erupted violently, and the raging green energy raged violently. The ground under his feet could not bear a large depression, and the gravel under his feet was suspended uncontrollably, and then was pulverized by the terrible energy. As soon as the endless thunderstorms around him approached, they were directly annihilated by the energy of his berserk breath. The heavy pressure made the air heavy like a mountain, and even Soul could smell the danger. His pupils flickering with lightning vibrated slightly. In a daze, he seemed to hear a roar like a bison. Bart was enveloped by a huge and majestic Taurus phantom. Bart's right hand in his crossed hands just clenched his fist, and with an unparalleled small universe, he shot out in the direction of Soul. Punch! Boom! The horrible Taurus lowered its head, and the horn of the terrifying Taurus aimed at Soul, which wanted to pierce the sky, and shot away at a terrifying speed. At a speed of one turn, a long ditch was plowed by Ubogging along the way, and all the raging thunder and lightning were crushed along the way, and the aura that almost destroyed everything was horrifying. Even if he was as brave as Soul, he couldn't help but feel a trace of fear in his heart. But then this trace of fear was crushed by Soul. Soul, who has a combative personality, yearns for such a battle the most. This kind of battle will not make him afraid of the opponents he faces, will make him more excited. Soul also roared angrily, and the divine power in his body was urged to the extreme. Like a tumbling tide, he stomped his right leg fiercely, advancing instead of retreating, waving Thor's hammer in his hand and smashing it towards the huge giant horn without any fear. The moment the huge horn collided with the hammer, time and space stopped for a moment. But then, disaster was born. A blinding white light shone, turning the sky and the earth into day. Rumble. The terrifying torrent of energy rolled and raged in all directions, and a huge shock wave instantly covered the entire duel arena. All Asgardian spectators on the duel arena were startled by the sudden, catastrophic power. To fly directly. The parents with their children immediately held their children in their arms and blocked the terrifying wind with their bodies. Even with the blessing of Odin's power, they can ignore the raging shock waves, but it doesn't mean they won't be blown by the wind. Fly. Those without children kept their hands in front of them, completely ignoring the wildly dancing hair, and firmly grasped the stone seat they were sitting on to stabilize their figures. The duel field kept shaking as if caught in an 8-magnitude earthquake. Fortunately, with the blessing of Asgard's power, the duel field was not overturned and destroyed. Otherwise, ordinary duel fields would not be able to withstand such a force collision. The catastrophic force collision lasted for a long, long time. The gods on the viewing platform stood up involuntarily, staring at the battlefield below with piercing eyes, ignoring the shock wave that stings the skin. Soul, will the battle be defeated? This is what the gods care about. It's really a terrifying warrior. In the whole of Asgard, except Thor, I believe no one can match him. It's incredible. The goddess of strength, Slud, stretched out her hand to block her body and shook her head with admiration. The shock in my heart is beyond words. She originally thought that Bart was overestimated enough, but she didn't expect to underestimate it. With such a level of power, let alone Thor, it is estimated that the entire Asgard gods can resist it with confidence. Known as the god of hunting, Uriel put his elbow on the waist of god of war Tyr and said in a low voice, "Are you confident that you can be the king?" Among the gods, god of war Tyr's combat power is naturally one of the best, and it can even be said to be the strongest at 680. Uriel is very curious whether Tyr can do this. While watching the arena, the others focused on Tyr. Facing the eyes of the gods, Tyr thought for a while, then shook his head bitterly. If I block, maybe I can block it, but I will be disabled if I don't die. The other gods sighed. Odin. The saints are truly a terrifying army. Volstagg stroked his messy beard and sighed soulfully. Fandral said softly from the side, "Maybe you don't know yet. I got a piece of news from the conversation with the Leo Gold Saint, and you may not believe it." "What news?" The others looked over curiously, and Fandral stroked his short beard gracefully, but he couldn't hide his shock at all. Every one of the saints over there is as powerful as Bart, even though they had guessed clearly when they really learned of this. All the gods couldn't help but set off a monstrous wave in their hearts. An existence like Bart's is no match for Odin in Asgard, and Sol doesn't seem to be his opponent now. As a result, the dozen or so saints over there are as strong as Bart. How terrible this is. However, this is not over yet, Fandral continued, but even his hands began to tremble when he said it. "Do you know how many saints there are?" 88. They are named after the stars, divided into gold, silver, and bronze, 12 gold saints, 24 silver saints, 48 bronze saints, and the most mysterious 4 unknown what level of Saint Seiya, but I believe it may not be weaker than the gold Saint Seiya, or even stronger. As soon as these words came out, everyone immediately turned to look at Fandral in disbelief. For a moment, everyone was silent because they were too shocked. How is this possible? There is another one as powerful as Bart the Taurus? Uriel, the of hunting, questioned. Chapter 74. Flowers and applause. I think you are wrong, but there are not only 11. Look over there. Some of those saints are bronze, some are silver, and some are gold. They are not weaker than Bart, which means that bronze and silver are not necessarily weaker than gold. Fandral slightly lifted his chin to look at Elvis. It is even very possible that the 88 gold saints are equally powerful, but the 12 golds may be slightly stronger, and there may be no lack of bronze and silver that are stronger than the gold saints. Fandral's speculation completely silenced all the gods. Even a city like Loki couldn't hide the shock and emotion on his face. After a while, Modi, known as the god of courage, showed a bitter smile and said with difficulty, "Although I am the god of courage, to be honest, they made me lose the courage to fight." He originally wanted to wait until Thor and Bart had fought before challenging another saint. But now, he, the god of courage, almost lost his courage. It can be seen that the battle just now and Fandral's words had a great impact on him. "Odin, what kind of monsters are these?" Hogan said in a daze, "We have no news about such a terrifying existence. Could it be that they come from outside the 9 realms? Who knows?" Fandral shook his head. "I have to say that being able to cultivate such a powerful legion shows how great the goddess Athena is." The goddess of strength, Slud, was full of admiration. Cultivating and commanding such a terrifying army of holy warriors, Athena is so great, and how powerful is she? Although it was a little out of place, Slud had an idea, that is, the goddess Athena, who looked peaceful and holy, might be by Odin. Is it even stronger? Not only Slud, but other gods also had the same idea. The gods looked at each other, but they still didn't say this. After all, it was somewhat disrespectful to Odin to say it. I'm really getting more and more curious about them. Volstagg's character is relatively simple and straightforward, and he is full of admiration after being shocked. He admires the strong most, and after waiting, he must have with those young girls who look quite young make friends. I just don't know if those teenagers and girls will drink. Look, when everyone was thinking differently, Hogan suddenly exclaimed and attracted everyone's attention. Everyone woke up and followed Hogan's gaze towards the duel field. I saw that on the duel field below, the turbulent torrent of energy had dissipated, and Bart was standing in the distance, standing upright, still intact, but with a thin layer of golden flame burning on his body, which was even more intense. Show its dignity and sanctity. And at a location almost a kilometer away from Bart, Sol looked a little embarrassed. Although he didn't seem to have suffered any serious injuries, the corner of his mouth was full of blood, which proved that he had suffered some injuries. Some parts of the armor on his body were somewhat damaged, and a corner of the red cloak on his back was torn. The chest rose and fell slightly. Sure enough, Sol is not an opponent yet. God of War Tyre had such an expression on his face. Sol's talent and strength are beyond doubt, but the opponent he faces is a stronger existence. But Sol won't give up, he is Sol. Although Wallstag also felt that the possibility of Sol's victory was not high, he still firmly believed that Sol would not give up and could fight the blood ran out. Also, as Wallstag said, Sol also knows that the opponent's strength must be higher than his own. But give up? It is impossible. Asgardians only die in battle, without retreating or fearing. Without speaking, Sol's eyes firmly reflected the golden figure. The latter also looked at Sol. By this time, no one wants to talk nonsense. Roared, the two shouted angrily at the same time, and the gold and the red collided together. Boom, 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 boom. There are no extra means, no brilliant lightning and tactics, just close combat with punches to the flesh. Sol hit Bart's shoulder with a hammer, and the latter punched Sol on the cheek with a backhand. No one backs down, wild, ferocious, facing what has just been revealed to the fullest. This fighting style also awakened the shocking Asgardian audience, and the roar of the mountains and tsunami once again plunged the duel arena into a manic atmosphere. Among the noisy sound waves, the battle didn't last long. Thor's divine body was indeed powerful, and thousands of years of combat experience gave him a super fighting awareness. It can be said that no matter what kind of enemy he faces, these are the weights that Sol must win. However, he met his greatest nemesis, the Saint Seiya. What is a saint? There is no doubt about the physical strength of the Saint Seiya, which is basically far stronger than Thor at the current stage. His strength and speed are all-round crushing, not to mention the fighting consciousness, and the reaction nerves of the Saint Seiya are even more crushing. Especially with the improvement of the small universe, it is super doubled in all directions. And the Saint Seiya's control of power is subtle to the abnormal level, which is why the Saint Seiya has always said that the same trick will not have any effect on it for the second time. Smiley face. If Bart, who has just awakened to the small universe, still has a chance, then Bart has basically no regrets after experiencing Kyle's own cruel special training and beatings. So Sol barely fought a tie from the beginning, and Bart became more familiar with Sol's fighting style as he got to the end. As the battle progressed, everyone present could see that Sol's defeat was a foregone conclusion. Boom. At the end of the battle, Bart easily dodged Sol's hammer. Bart took a step forward with his right foot, and his figure had already come behind Sol. His big hand was like covering the sky, and he precisely grasped the back of Sol's neck. The powerful and ferocious force was here burst out and hit the ground hard. The earth cracked instantly, and the gravel splashed in all directions. Thor was smashed into the sunken deep pit, blood spewed out of his mouth, and even the tightly held Thor's hammer had been loosened. Call, call, call. Thor's chest kept rising and falling, looking up at the sky of Asgard, a little lost. How long has it been since you felt this way? Perhaps when he was young, Father God Odin was training his young self. At that time, he had that kind of powerlessness, which was impossible to overcome no matter what. And today, Sol felt that feeling again. Recalling the previous battles, he only realized at this time that Bart had completely seen through his way of fighting and his thinking. Not only that, but Bart was also beaten to the bone with him in terms of fighting skills. As a result, Sol hit the opponent, which didn't work at all. And every punch, every elbow, or whip kick of the opponent can make him vomit blood. It's not a level fight at all. Even with Sol's cheerful personality, he was somewhat disappointed in his crushed failure. Suddenly, in a flash, a hand with a golden glove appeared in front of him. Sol moved his head slightly and saw that it was Bart, bent slightly, stretching out his hand to pull himself up. He took a fixed look at Bart. At this time, his golden mask disappeared at some point, revealing that slightly immature face. His eyes were full of joy and happiness, and he also recognized him. Is it his recognition of himself? For a loser? Not knowing what to think, he just paused for a second. Sol suddenly thought about it. Isn't it just a defeat? What will happen to him because of a defeat? Bart grew up in the light he won. Isn't this fighting style his favorite? He is the Thor of Asgard. If he loses this time, he will continue to become stronger in the future until he surpasses Bart. This is him, Thor, who is trusted by all Asgardians. After thinking about it, Sol let out a sharp breath, stretched out his left hand to hold Bart's left wrist, and grinned at Bart. The latter also smiled, and with a little force, he pulled Sol up from the pit. The two faced each other. Thor held Thor's hammer in his right hand, took a step forward, held Bart's shoulder with his left hand, patted Bart hard, then let go, hammered on Bart's thick chest with his fist, and said with a bold smile, "I lost, my good brother. You really convinced me, but you have to be cautious. This failure will only make me stronger. I will not lose again in the next challenge." Facing the enthusiastic and heroic Sol, Bart's helmet turned into golden ripples and dispersed. He shook his hair, then reached out and patted Sol's shoulder with a happy look. "Haha, I'm waiting for you. But you have to catch up quickly, or I'm afraid you won't even be able to see my taillights by then. Haha, I won't give you a chance. I still want to surpass you and become the strongest fighter." Sol patted his chest hard with a confident expression. Then he raised Bart's left hand up to the sky and shouted to the Asgard auditorium, "Let us give our most sincere cheers and applause to the victor, the son of Bart. He is a warrior worthy of respect in Asgard." The voice just fell. The sound waves breaking through the sky resounded instantly. Hundreds of thousands of Asgardians in the auditorium stood up and clenched their fists and roared. Some applauded enthusiastically, and some jumped up and down to offer their blessings to the winners. In the end, the originally chaotic roar gradually evolved into a uniform voice. "Bart, Bart, Bart, Bart." Wang Qian's. Hundreds of thousands of people shouted a person's name with all their strength at the same time, and the effect presented was enough to make anyone's blood spurt. As the protagonist, Bart even showed an excited smile. He likes people's adoring eyes, and he likes them calling his name. This is the glory that belongs to him, and the glory that also belongs to the Saint Warrior. This kind of glory is not only for myself, but also for Athena. The supreme goddess in his heart changed his mediocre life and allowed him to enjoy glory and cheers. He raised his head and looked towards the viewing platform, seeing arrived at the valley of the goddess Athena, who stood up from the throne. I also saw the praise in the gentle eyes of the goddess Athena. Bart smiled happily and was simple. If the cheers and applause from the people of Asgard made him excited, then the appreciation from Athena made him really happy. Because only in this way will Bart feel that his hard work and the experience of being brutally abused and beaten by the Pope are all worthwhile. But this is not enough. Far from enough. He follows Athena and protects Athena just like the saints of the past generations. This is the real value he should have in becoming a saint. "I still want to become stronger," Bart vowed inwardly. Chapter 75. Conversation between father and son. Cheers and applause were enjoyed. Bart and Sol exit. Odin stood up and was very satisfied with Sol's performance. He believed that this failure would become the nourishment for Sol's growth, making Sol more mature and hardworking. Instead of focusing on fighting, he believes that being with better fighters will also affect Sol. Good people are only attracted to better people. That's why Odin single-handedly facilitated this battle, and through this battle, the friendship between Sanctuary and Asgard has deepened, which can be said to kill two birds with one stone. Odin, who was in a happy mood, stood up and came to the edge of the roof. His old and majestic voice immediately covered the entire arena. "I am very happy to witness this duel. Whether it is Sol or Bart, they have proved the bravery and fearlessness of warriors. This is the character that the strong should have. As I said before, the winner will be immediately in the treasure house. Pick a loot and it will take effect immediately." Odin was silent after finishing speaking, while Kal spoke later. "The fearlessness and courage of a warrior is the key to victory. If you bless Sol with the will of Athena and move forward in a greater direction, the crises you encounter along the way will become nutrients for growth. Understand the path of the king and harvest the purest universe. Love and friendship." Ong, the ethereal and majestic female voice washes everyone's hearts like a clear spring. In the sky, strands of cherry blossoms bloomed by divine power fell, precisely falling on the hundreds of thousands of people present. No matter men, women, old or young, the cherry blossoms were like the most beautiful sight in everyone's heart. When holding the cherry blossoms, all the haze and anger will be dispelled. And around Sol, who is the protagonist, there are beautiful elves wearing flower rings and fluttering small transparent wings. cheering and applauding around Sol. Under Sol's bewildered and confused eyes, these elves slowly turned into strands of golden particles and sank into Sol's body. The latter immediately felt a warm and peaceful force surge in his body, washing away all the wounds left by 710 in his body due to the battle. In a short moment, his whole body seemed to be washed. Broken cloaks and armor have been restored to look like new. Even, Sol noticed that his physical fitness and divine power had increased visibly with the naked eye. And that power has not dissipated, but hidden in his soul and body. When he encounters any danger in the future, the divine power bestowed by Kyle will protect him from danger. Sol was not an idiot. He immediately understood how much gift he had received, immediately raised his head with gratitude on his face, clenched his right fist on his left chest, and expressed his lofty respect and gratitude. "Thank you very much for your blessings, Your Majesty. Sol will take your blessings to become stronger and grow into a truly qualified warrior and king." While being grateful, I lamented the greatness of this Athena. Such vast and unfathomable divine power is really the first person he has met in his life, and he even faintly feels that even his father Odin may be inferior. But this also made Thor's heart even hotter. This kind of great existence is the goal he yearns for. Of course, it is not realistic to surpass this Athena. His goal at this stage is to surpass and defeat himself Bart. Accompanied by Sol's grateful words, this time the duel that Asgard remembered in the annals of history came to an end. Of course, the significance of this great duel naturally needs no words. Although Sol was defeated in this battle, not only did he not disappoint the people of Asgard, on the contrary, he looked forward to how far the future king would grow. Maybe he will become the real king like Odin, the king of the gods, commanding Asgard to dominate the 9 realms. Protect the glory of Asgard. Similarly, it also made the whole of Asgard realize the goddess Athena, who is as great as Odin, and her powerful young warriors. That is a powerful warrior who can defeat Thor. Although the other saints didn't make a move, everyone knew that these young fighters would not be weaker than Bart, and might even be stronger. There is no doubt that the saints have become the most powerful legion in the hearts of the people of Asgard, even if the Valkyries of God's domain are completely incomparable with other armies. Because of this duel, the atmosphere of the night banquet that continued in the evening became more intense, causing the already enthusiastic Asgardian gods and warriors to be extremely sought after by the boys and girls. What is the best way to draw in friendship? Obviously, no matter where, including Asgard, there are 2, fists and wine. The former is satisfied. Of course, there is only good wine at the banquet. The gods and warriors ran to the seat belonging to Sol one after another, holding big wine glasses, and began toasting and communicating loudly with Bart and others. Although Bart and the others were a little surprised by Asgard's enthusiasm, they did not reject it. As for the age gap, there is no such thing at all. As long as you are strong enough, you will get flowers and love. Fortunately, Bart and the others have already matured their minds, and their personalities are very good, so for a while, they also have a relationship with the gods of Asgard. Hit hot. The holy clothes were taken off, revealing the original clothes. The cheerful and lively Bart, Elvis, and Sol, the 3 warriors of Asgard, joined hands to drink together. Can't beat the strength, can't drink alcohol? However, it is clear that the calculations of Sol and the others are still in vain. For the strong physical strength of the Saint Seiya, the digestive system is much more exaggerated than the Asgardian body. The only difference is that these wines contain more energy than food. In this warm atmosphere, the banquet lasted until the early morning of the next day. However, the battlefield on the wine table naturally ended with Sol's side being crushed. On the ground and on the wine table, Sol and the others were all lying on the ground, like corpses, murmuring unconsciously when lying down to sleep what to drink. The picture scenes are quite interesting and funny. Kyle didn't stay in Asgard for a long time with his subordinates, and he returned to the sanctuary on the 3rd day. Basically, all the goals of this trip have been achieved. The 2 parties are very satisfied with this meeting. During the exchange between Kyle and Odin, many cooperation matters were reached, which can be regarded as the alliance between Sanctuary and Asgard. Many things are not stated clearly, but both parties know it well. It is said to be an alliance, but in fact the real dominant position is still on the Sanctuary side. After all, judging from the current situation, although Asgard has a deep foundation, in terms of strength, Asgard is far inferior to the Sanctuary. Odin, the strongest king of the gods, is now late, and he is no match for Kyle, who is becoming more and more powerful. In addition, no one under Odin can match the saints. As for the army, It's just a decoration in a sense. There are indeed a lot of Asgard's troops, and there are many high-tech weapons and magically enchanted spell weapons, but in real terms, basically one bark can kill all light. That's the gap. The future has become cloudy because of Kyle, and Odin can no longer see the disturbed future, but his wisdom made Odin weighed down. His original plan for Sol has been abandoned, and the latter has completely embarked on a completely different path. As a father, since it can save Sol from that terrible and lonely future, and can also avoid the twilight of the gods, why not do it? Smiley face. There is a better choice. So Odin will not insist that Thor will lose his lover after losing his parents, and it is the right choice to walk alone to the throne. Odin is not so old and dizzy to this point, and on this path of growth, sanctuary is essential. To put it bluntly, after Odin fell and entered the Hall of Valor, sanctuary will act as a protector to protect Asgard until Thor truly becomes king. Now, what Odin pays is the resources needed by the sanctuary, various rare metals and materials. Besides, Kyle didn't need it, and Asgard undoubtedly made a profit in this deal. After watching Kyle leave Asgard with the saints under his command, Odin let everyone disperse and only brought Thor and Loki to the elegant and secluded river. At this time, Odin was not holding the eternal spear or wearing armor, but just wearing ordinary clothes. At this time, he was not the king of the gods who ruled the 9 realms, but the father of 2 children. The father and son walked on the beach by the river, listening to the crisp calls of the birds and the sound of the river flowing. The 2 brothers followed Odin, one from the left and the other from the right. Loki was deep in thought. Although he had no expression on the surface, he was already guessing what the purpose of Odin's trip was in his heart. As a result, it didn't take long before Odin opened his mouth to make Loki's heart skip a beat. Loki, do you want to be king? As soon as these words came out, the expressions of the 2 brothers changed drastically, and they suffered a huge shock in their hearts and even stopped in their footsteps. Odin was not surprised, but turned and looked directly at Loki. The domineering and majestic eyes made this originally late the king, regained the king's momentum. The oppressive look in his eyes made Loki nervous. This father. Loki didn't even know what to say because of the sudden words. The brain was running rapidly, trying to analyze the meaning of Odin's words, but he suddenly noticed a trace of disappointment in Odin's eyes, which made Loki's body stiff, and he just looked at Odin in a daze. Father, you. Thor wanted to say something, but was interrupted by Odin waving his hand. Loki, how have you been feeling these 2 days? Sol opened his mouth and hesitated to speak, but Loki came back to his senses, sorted out his thoughts, and wanted to disguise himself as before. Father, sanctuary, and Asgard. Loki, you know that's not the answer I wanted. Odin interrupted on the spot, and his tone became a little more serious. The subtle change in tone directly made Loki's heart skip a beat. Father and son had been together for thousands of years, and he didn't dare to say that he fully understood the character of the king of the gods, but now it was obvious that Odin was angry. Loki didn't dare to think carefully now, and immediately became obedient. The rise of sanctuary has become a settlement. I think it must be a very wise choice for the father to make friends with sanctuary. Although the words sound a bit ironic, the Asgard god realm, which has ruled the 9 realms for thousands of years, now feels lucky to be able to form an alliance with another force. It's cruel, but it's the truth. What else? Odin didn't know. Sol watched the communication between his father and younger brother helplessly, completely unable to intervene. Although he didn't understand why this happened, he vaguely felt that it had a lot to do with him. This time, the conversation between the father and son seems to be closely related to the future. Perhaps it is also a choice that determines the future of Rocky.